Chapter 9:17. After Qin Wushuang separated from Wang Quan, he found a relatively secluded place and released the 9 golem puppet. These 9 golem puppets followed Qin Wushuang to cultivate. As Qin Wushuang's strength increased, their puppets' realms were also constantly improving. Now, these puppets, in terms of physical strength, were close to the strength of the 7th Tribulation Transformation Supreme Tao realm. Their individual cultivation was also hovering between the 7th and 8th Tribulation Transformation Supreme Tao realm. One advantage of puppets was that they did not have a divine Tao heavenly tribulation. However, without a divine Tao heavenly tribulation, the disadvantage was also obvious. Compared to cultivators of the same level, their individual battle prowess was definitely far inferior to cultivators of the same level. Moreover, without the deliberate nurturing of their master, their potential was limited. It was impossible for them to climb mountains endlessly like human cultivators. However, the distribution of these 9 golem puppets was clearly arranged according to the posture of the 9 palace return to one sword formation. Unless one understood this formation, one would not be able to see the mystery inside. On the other hand, Qin Wushuang hid in the dark and weakened himself completely. Of course, he did not deliberately hide anything. He knew that there were very powerful existences among those souls. It would be difficult for him to completely hide in front of those powerful souls. Therefore, he did not pretend to be pretentious. Instead, he let nature take its course and cultivated there. It gave people the feeling that he had always been here. Qin Wushuang was very patient and was not in a hurry. He knew that this kind of seduction tactic could only succeed and could not fail. Once it failed, these souls would communicate with each other and the plan would be useless. If he wanted this kind of fishing tactic to maintain its eternal vitality, he absolutely could not let the other party see through this plan. Otherwise, this plan would not work after only one use. In other words, he could either kill in one strike or not make a move at all. It was obviously the same on Wang Quan's side. Speaking of which, Wang Quan's side was more difficult than Qin Wushuang's. After all, Wang Quan was completely relying on that puppet as bait. On Qin Wushuang's side, the puppet was used as bait and he himself was a hired thug. Once the 9 palaces returned to one sword formation was activated, even if a few spirits were to barge in, they would be killed in one fell swoop. Cunning alien race, bring it on. Qin Wushuang murmured in his heart. 3 days later, not a single fish took the bait. However, Qin Wushuang was not depressed. On the contrary, he was rather excited. That was because in the past 3 days, no fish had taken the bait. However, some fish had come to pry. Clearly, the outsiders were very cunning and cautious. They didn't rush over in a hurry, but carefully observed the situation. It was obvious that they were trying to eliminate the enemy. Qin Wushuang was very patient. In a corner about 200 miles away from Qin Wushuang, 3 divine souls gathered together. These 3 alien divine souls were 3 of the 6 divine souls that were responsible for attracting the attention of the others. Old Gao, why did you ask us to come here? Yes, Old Gao, Lord Anai Meng wants us to act separately. If we gather together, we will violate his order. That Old Gao said with a smile. Brothers, we have been brothers for tens of thousands of years. I won't stand on ceremony with you. You see, I only asked the 2 of you to come here, but I didn't inform the other 3. I just trust you. Hearing Old Gao's words, the other 2 were silent. They knew that Old Gao must have done so for a reason. Old Gao said with a mysterious smile, Brothers, what do you think we need most at the moment? What? The Starry River Boundary Formation? Bullshit, the Starry River Boundary Formation. Even if we find it, can we really destroy it with just the 3 of us? We are not cut out for that. To put it bluntly, we are just pawns. Lord Anai Meng didn't send anyone else but us. To put it nicely, we are covering for them. To put it bluntly, we are just scapegoats. If we have to die, we will definitely die first. What he said was not false at all. The other two were also helpless. We have no choice, old Gao. Lord Meng is our leader. It's natural for us to follow his orders. Do you think we can still resist? Old Gao shook his head. I've thought about it. Lord Meng sent us to be the vanguard because he thinks we are the least valuable. If we improve our strength and have enough influence on Lord Meng, will he still let us be the vanguard? Old Gao, what are you trying to say? Let's get this over with. There are no outsiders here. We are all brothers. The other guy shouted. I mean, there is a very good opportunity to improve our strength and increase our status. Do you dare to try it? Old Gao stopped keeping them in suspense and said directly. Old Gao, what opportunity? Yes, tell me in detail. Old Gao said with a smile. I found a group of cultivators in a hidden place. They seem to be in closed-door training. This is a good opportunity for us to seize the physical body. A group of cultivators, how many of them? 9, a total of 9. Old Gao said with certainty. So many? Yes, I have observed them for 3 days. Old Du, Old Wang, are you interested? Do you have the guts? Old Gao tried to provoke them. The two people's breathing obviously became rapid. It would be a lie to say that they were not tempted by the physical body in front of them. However, Old Gao's tone obviously hinted that all of this might be risky. Old Gao, frankly speaking, how high do you think our chances of success are? Old Du asked. Old Gao shook his head. I don't know. But I can be sure that these 9 cultivators are not a threat to us. The 9 of them together can't do anything to any of us. Old Gao, don't forget that our current fighting strength is at most similar to the peak of the genuine Supreme Tao stage. Old Wang reminded. Haha, Old Wang, of course I know this. So, we must obtain the physical body. Only by obtaining the physical body can we occupy the leading position in the team. Even Lord Meng has to show some respect to us. The status of these escaped souls was obviously different from those who didn't have a physical body. With physical bodies, their strength was obviously incomparable to those without. 9 cultivators, what is their cultivation level? Old Du also asked. They are definitely not at the genuine Supreme Tao stage. They are still some distance away from the genuine Supreme Tao stage. I don't dare to float too close to observe. I'm afraid of being discovered by them. If they are not at the genuine Supreme Tao stage, then it's easy. Old Du shouted. However, Old Wang said, Do you think this is a trap? Old Gao said unhappily, Whether it is a trap or not, I have investigated very clearly. Within 1,000 miles, those guys who are chasing after us are definitely not there. We can snatch those physical bodies in a breath. What are you worried about? Old Wang and Old Du nodded. If those pursuers are not nearby, then there is nothing to worry about. 1,000 miles is enough for us to deal with them. Haha. Old Gao, lead the way. On the 4th day, Qin Wushuang's mind moved slightly, and he smiled knowingly. They are here, they are finally here. It seems that there is more than one of them. It seems that these foreign race monsters are indeed cunning. 3. Qin Wushuang still thought that they were too few. It would be best if there were 5 or 6 of them. Once these spirits were surrounded by the 9 palaces returned to one sword formation, Qin Wushuang would kill them with one arrow. He would not be polite at all. The 9 of you, pay attention. Stay calm, the enemies are approaching. Before they enter the attack range, don't act rashly. These puppets were easy to control. They were all under Qin Wushuang's control. Since Qin Wushuang instructed, these golem puppets naturally would not do anything out of line. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 3 spirits did not disperse. Carrying that kind of meteor-like momentum, they landed in the surroundings and flew in 3 directions, forming 3 whirlpool-like countercurrents that rolled back and forth. Obviously, they wanted to set off a huge countercurrent to sweep away these 9 golem puppets. The moment their spirits approached, the 9 golem puppets suddenly moved at the same time. The 9 palaces' return to one sword formation was suddenly activated, and the positions of the 9 palaces formed one. The sword formation was activated, and 9 sword lights intertwined, forming a sword light vortex. It was as magnificent as a dazzling galaxy and directly swept over. The ball of light formed by the 9 sword lights actually swallowed the 3 countercurrent vortexes directly. The 3 spirits immediately rushed over. Their surroundings were like stormy waves. It was as if the area was boiling all of a sudden, like huge waves that were tens of thousands of feet high were constantly rising. Only then did the 3 spirits know that they had indeed stepped into a trap. Old Du cried out, "Old Gao, you've killed us!" The magical power of the 9 palaces returned to one sword formation was that it could each exert the power of 9 people 81 times. This 81 times power was multiplied by 9. It was equivalent to 1,000 times power. Once 1,000 times power was formed, that kind of power was definitely at the level of heaven collapsing and earth destroying. As soon as the vortex formed, the 3 of them immediately rushed over. A powerful airflow wrapped around them, making their bodies feel as if they were tied up, and their movements were immediately hindered. Charge out with all your strength. At this moment, Old Wang was the calmest. Don't split up, we have to charge out together. If we split up, only death awaits us. Old Wang could see that this magical sword formation strengthened the opponent's power. Relying on their individual strength alone, it was impossible to resist the powerful airflow. Only if the 3 of them worked together, there was a glimmer of hope. At this moment, Qin Wushuang's figure suddenly rushed out. He smiled faintly, and his voice was like a steel needle piercing in. "Since you're here, why leave?" The graceful spiritual bow was activated, and 3 shooting sun arrows shot towards the core of the sword formation with the power to destroy the heavens and earth. 4 long-range attacks, the graceful spiritual bow was still the best choice. With the encirclement of the 9 palaces returned to one sword formation and the shocking power of the graceful spiritual bow, the spirits of the heavenly supreme Tao stage experts would at most be on par with those at the peak of the genuine supreme Tao stage, when they had not even recovered half of their strength. In this way, the result could be imagined. With the power to destroy everything, the shooting sun arrows rushed into the vortex. With a loud bang, they turned into 3 powerful explosions of golden light and directly blasted the 3 spirits into dregs. They did not even have the time to cry out. With a swing of the golden light, the surroundings became clear, and there was no longer any trace of the spirits. The most miraculous thing was that the surrounding environment did not suffer much damage under such a battle. It could be seen how much effort was spent on the construction of this god-discarding labyrinth. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 9:18. The plan was a success as they killed 3 divine souls and greatly weakened the enemy's harassment power. Qin Wushuang restored the battlefield and did not linger. He left quietly. He knew that regardless of the result, killing 3 of the enemy's divine souls would certainly raise a high level of vigilance. However, as long as this plan to lure the enemy was not seen through, there would always be people who coveted the corporeal body and would fall into this trap. However, the difficulty would be greater each time. Now, Qin Wushuang had no time to consider the problem of difficulty. If he could kill 1 divine soul, he would earn 1. Clearly, the combat power of those 3 divine souls had reached the peak of the genuine supreme Tao stage. According to Qin Wushuang's analysis, for sure these 3 divine souls were at the heavenly supreme Tao stage. Divine souls did not have corporeal bodies. Plus, they had just come out of the seal and had yet to recover completely. Despite this fact, they still had combat power at the peak of the genuine supreme Tao stage. Such enemies were terrifying. If they were allowed to recover to their peak state, the Tianxian land would be in great danger. Upon thinking of the 20 or so divine souls that escaped in the first batch, which were even more powerful, Qin Wushuang felt a burst of irritation. Up to this point, he still could not figure out who the spy that used the blood sacrifice method to break the seal was. However, clearly this was not important at the moment. Now, the most important thing was to investigate how many divine souls the enemy had in this god-discarding maze. At this moment, Wang Quan sent a report of success. They had successfully killed a divine soul. After the two of them met up and discussed, Wang Quan said, "Wushuang, according to my observation, this group of divine souls of the foreign races has obviously changed their strategy. They sent these wandering warriors to harass us. Their main force must have spread out to cultivate and recover their strength." In fact, Qin Wushuang already noticed this point. He nodded and said, "I think so too. Now the difficult problem is how many main forces they have and what level they are at." Wang Quan analyzed. "I don't think there will be too many and there will not be anyone too powerful. Or else, with their overwhelming advantage, there is no need for them to hide and evade us. If they charge at us directly, we should be the ones running away." It was a reasonable analysis. On the contrary, the first batch of divine souls that escaped are much more powerful. I wonder how Taoist Brother Clothed and the others are doing. Wang Quan sighed. Qin Wushuang suddenly smiled and said, "Another fish has taken the bait." Qin Wushuang kept the 9 golem puppets outside, and sure enough, another divine soul was attracted. This divine soul was even more impatient than old Gao and the other two. When it saw this kind of low-level cultivator, its curiosity was greatly aroused. Who would have thought that he would fall right into a trap? After Wang Quan and Qin Wushuang arrived, this guy could only be killed. 5. Haha, this plan is indeed good. We've killed 5 divine souls. Wushuang, it seems that this strategy is working. Qin Wushuang wasn't as optimistic. Taoist Brother Wang Quan, this is only the beginning. The enemy isn't vigilant enough. When they find out that their companions have disappeared for no reason, they won't be able to see through our plan, so they will be more careful. That is true. However, their thirst for physical bodies was sometimes irresistible even by reason. Unless it's those divine souls that have seized physical bodies. Wang Quan sighed with emotion. This time, my illusion Heavenly Lake has suffered a great loss. Especially the Amei immortal sect. It seems that the 9-change celestial tiger is a spy from the foreign tribes. Celestial Miao Yun of the Amei Taoist sect has also disappeared. Celestial Miao Yun? Suddenly, Qin Wushuang was moved inwardly. It seemed that inside his spiritual perception, there was a strange thought that was restless. Yet, he could not tell what it was exactly. "Wushuang, what is it?" Wang Quan asked curiously. "Celestial Miao Yun, Celestial Miao Yun." Qin Wushuang grabbed his head and felt that something was wrong. Speaking of this Miao Yun, initially she also had a one-sided love with my junior brother Jin Chan. Too bad. Haha. What? A strange light shot out from Qin Wushuang's eyes. Wasn't this the same as that Yun Hong? Yes. Qin Wushuang smiled bitterly. It must be her, it's Celestial Miao Yun. She is a spy, the biggest suspect that released the divine souls of these foreign tribes. Instantly, Wang Quan was stunned. Wushuang, this is not a joke. Qin Wushuang gave a long sigh. Yun Hong from the Qi Wen clan of the Endless Eastern Sea. Did she have a relationship with brother Jin Chan? How did you know? Wang Quan was somewhat surprised. It's like this. Qin Wushuang recounted Yun Hong experience in full detail. Wang Quan was dumbstruck. This way, Celestial Miao Yun is a spy. She betrayed the Tianxian land and willingly became a dog of the foreign tribes? Brother Wang Quan, in my opinion, Perhaps this celestial Miao Yun is in a worse situation than Yun Hong. For sure, someone has controlled her divine soul. Or else, I am afraid that Yun Hong would not have done something like destroying herself to break the seal. Wang Chan gave a long sigh. I am afraid that's the case. Whether it's celestial Miao Yun or not, the truth will come to light when we excavate all the seized corporeal bodies. If celestial Miao Yun is not inside those corporeal bodies, then the person that died at the seal must be celestial Miao Yun. Qin Wushuang waved his hand. Brother Wang Chan, the dead have already passed away. I suggest that we don't need to investigate this matter further. Or else, if we make a big fuss, it will not be good for the unity of the totem powerhouses. Of course, the Karakoram Immortal Sect must investigate the Amei Daoist sect in private. See if the other higher-ups of the Amei Daoist sect have fallen. Yes. Wang Chan was incredibly satisfied with Qin Wushuang's understanding. Clearly, Qin Wushuang was finding a way out for the illusion Heavenly Lake to avoid becoming the target of public criticism. When Qin Wushuang thought through the matter of celestial Miao Yun, he still felt somewhat troubled. He always felt that he had not finished digging out the inspiration for this matter. In that instant, a few inspirations had emerged in his head. When facing the strange changes, his heartstrings had been stretched taut. Now, as he calmed down to think, he slapped his thigh with sudden realization and laughed. Brother Wang Chan, I am truly muddle-headed. I am riding a horse looking for a horse. Oh? How come you are riding a horse looking for a horse? Qin Wushuang roared with laughter. Speaking of which, I have good stuff on me that has always played a great role. Now I have forgotten about it. As he spoke, he took out the observant finger jade plate. This object is called the observant finger jade plate. The divine soul of everyone that entered this god-discarding maze has been collected by this jade plate. Those 8 people that have gone missing, they are also included. Brother Wang Chan, please take a look. The others have already left the god-discarding door and are no longer displayed. Indeed, there are no traces of celestial Miao Yun. Most likely, she is already dead. For the other 7 people, although their corporeal bodies were taken away, their divine souls must have been destroyed. However, their corporeal bodies were still there. The remaining divine soul chi in the corporeal bodies could not be completely eliminated in a short time. Therefore, the observant finger jade plate still has a display. Unless their corporeal bodies collapse, the remaining divine souls will not completely disappear. Wang Chan's eyes turned cold. So, you can determine the location of these corporeal bodies? That's right. According to my observations, they should be between the 7th and 9th levels of the maze. The specific location is too far away and cannot be determined. However, as long as we continue to get closer, we can definitely determine their location. Wang Chan was overjoyed. This is great. Then shouldn't we charge over and catch them off guard? Qin Wushuang shook his head. Even if we charge over, it will not be useful. We will not be able to kill them. In my opinion, we should call for reinforcements. Reinforcements? That's right. We must invite one of the 2 brothers from the outer area of the god-discarding door to come in. Only then will we have the confidence to kill them. Otherwise, if the 2 of us encounter a truly powerful divine soul of the heavenly supreme Tao stage, we can at most protect ourselves. It will be very difficult to kill the enemy. Wang Chan thought about it and agreed. Even if they called Golden Ray Dragon King and the other 3 over, it would not be of any help. Only a true expert of the heavenly supreme Tao stage would be able to make the most of the difference. As experts who had just entered the heavenly supreme Tao stage, their killing power against the foreign races was limited. Alright, let's go out and call for reinforcements. Qin Wushuang and Wang Chan contacted Golden Ray Dragon King and the others before flying out. If they did not find trouble with the foreign races would naturally not find trouble with Qin Wushuang and the others. After all, they did not have the confidence to deal with Qin Wushuang and Wang Quan. When they arrived at the entrance of the god-discarding door, Miao Su had already returned. This way, 3 of the Heavenly Mystery 7 disciples were at the entrance of the god-discarding door. Seeing Qin Wushuang and the others come out, Li Yifeng asked curiously, "Why did you come out?" Qin Wushuang explained the situation. Xiao Yishuan and Li Yifeng's expressions were grave. Li Yifeng said, "You too, come and take a look here." As he spoke, Li Yifeng took them to the place where the 9 keys of the god-discarding door were. The 9 huge keys were emitting a dim light, as if they were on their last breaths, as if the sun was setting in the west. These 9 spiritual keys are already close to the limit of their spiritual qi consumption. This is also the reason why you only have 4 months to enter the god-discarding door for each batch. Now that the time is almost up, without the support of Taoist brother Linghui, the spiritual keys are already showing signs of exhaustion. Once the spiritual keys collapse, this god-discarding door will never be opened. Li Yifeng said with an incredibly deep tone. "Is there no other way?" Qin Wushuang said with a bitter smile. "Yes, if Taoist brother Linghui is here, he can use his supreme Tao power and burn it to provide spiritual qi. As long as no accidents occur, theoretically, it can continue to be consumed. However, to Taoist brother Linghui, it will be a huge consumption." With 2 difficult choices, Li Bai was currently chasing after those divine souls that had escaped. If he were to return and the other 3 chased after him, clearly they would have less people. 2 Taoist brothers, go in and kill those devilish foreign tribe disciples. Leave this place to me. Miao Su volunteered. My supreme Tao power is not as strong as Taoist brother Linghui, but it will not be a problem to hold on for 3 or 5 months. When Taoist brother Linghui returns, I will give it to him. Xiao Yishuan and Li Yifeng exchanged a glance and nodded at the same time. This seemed to be the only way at the moment. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 9:19. Once Xiao Yishuan and Li Yifeng entered the game, the situation would naturally change drastically. Xiao Yishuan would be in charge of blocking the outside, while Li Yifeng, Qin Wushuang, and Wang Quan would be in charge of hunting. This division of labor could ensure that those divine souls would escape. If there were too many of them, it would create a greater impact on the Miao Su on the outside. It would not be a good thing. The observant finger jade plate showed that the 7 supreme Tao elite warriors who had acquired the bodies did not gather together. Clearly, they had their own concerns. They were worried that if they gathered together, the movements would be too great and would be detected. However, no matter how they calculated, they did not expect the observant finger jade plate to see through the flaw of the body. Li Yifeng said, "Wang Quan, you will be in charge of luring away their eyes. I believe with your strength, it will not be a problem." Wang Quan knew that for this battle, the main force was this brother Li Yifeng before him, and not him. He nodded and left. After Wang Quan left, Li Yifeng asked Qin Wushuang, "Junior brother Wushuang, how do you plan to make a move?" Qin Wushuang laughed. "I thought about it. If we take the initiative to go to them and kill 1 or 2, the others will certainly be alerted and it will be much more difficult to hunt them down. We must do it cleanly and efficiently. Yes, time is tight, we must hurry. Let's go, we will make a move on this guy in the northwest direction." Li Feng was rather straightforward. However, Qin Wushuang shook his head. "Third senior brother, I have analyzed that among the bodies occupied by these 7 divine souls, the most powerful one is an elite warrior at the 6th calamity of the genuine supreme Tao stage from the Fire God clan. I am guessing that the one occupying the most powerful body must be the leader of this group of divine souls." Li Feng's eyes lit up. "Capture the leader first? By killing the leader, the other divine souls would be like a group of dragons without a leader and certainly fall into chaos. This was a good suggestion. Immediately, Li Feng became enthusiastic. Haha, junior brother Wushuang, since you can target the strongest leader, it would be useless no matter how good it is. Qin Wushuang laughed. Third senior brother, follow behind me, I will use my body as bait, certainly that guy will be tempted. By that time, when he is not paying attention, you will kill him in one move. Killing the enemy in one move was still very difficult. In particular, this divine soul realm might be even stronger than Li Yifeng's. However, without a physical body, there was a limit to how strong a soul could be. Without a compatible physical body, he would not be able to bring out even half of his strength. In a battle, he would surely be at a disadvantage. As for Li Yifeng, he also had a sovereign artifact. This was a huge advantage. Niao's plan of wholeheartedly cultivating had not even been completed for a month when he discovered that 5 of the 6 vanguards he sent out had already been killed. The news kept coming, which made Niao feel very unhappy. Sir, we can't go on like this. At this moment, the 2 protectors beside Niao said one after another, we still have the advantage in numbers. Once they nibble away at us step by step, we won't have the advantage in numbers anymore. Why don't we gather the other 6 sirs and counterattack? According to our observations, there are only 5 or 6 enemies in this god-discarding labyrinth. Their strength had only just entered the heavenly supreme Tao realm. There is nothing to be afraid of. Niao's eyeballs moved gently. During this period of time, he had integrated about 20 to 30% of the physical body that he had seized. He was still far from achieving great success. With this level of physical body, it was not compatible with his soul at all. When facing a first tribulation heavenly supreme Tao realm expert, he might still have some advantage. When facing a second tribulation heavenly supreme Tao realm expert, he would definitely be defeated. Therefore, it was very difficult for him to make up his mind. Sir Niao, the enemy is constantly nibbling away at us. Once we lose the advantage in numbers, the enemy will counterattack even more unscrupulously. At that time, the situation will be even more unfavorable. If Sir Long doesn't come back to rescue us, we will be in a very bad situation. Impossible. Niao denied flatly. Sir Long is my biological brother. How can he not come to rescue us? Everyone knows about the brotherly relationship between Sir Long and you. However, Sir Long has just escaped from the cage and needs time to find a physical body and refine it. It will be very difficult for them to return in a short period of time. If they found that you didn't rush out and wanted to come back, they would have come back long ago. It has been so long. If they still haven't come back, it means. When the subordinate said this, he stopped. Lights flashed across Niao's eyes. What does it mean? Sir, I am guessing that when Sir Long and the others escaped, they were also pursued by the elite powerhouses of the Tian Xianland. They could not spare any time to rescue us. Or else, with the brotherly relationship between you two. Niao's expression changed slightly. This was definitely the thing he was most worried about. If the first group of elite warriors escaped and were pursued by the top elite warriors of the Tian Xianland, it would be great trouble. However, are there that many heavenly supreme Tao elite warriors in the Tian Xianland? Niao still could not believe it. He always felt that it was impossible for the Tian Xianland to have that many heavenly supreme Tao elite warriors. In the middle of their conversation, suddenly Niao's divine soul moved slightly. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes into a line and a ruthless gaze shot out from his eyes to look into the distance. Sir, what is it? It seems a rat is crashing over. You two, protect me from the left and right. I will go and see what level the rat is at. Niao let out a sinister laugh. He floated out like a gust of wind and dropped to the outside. When he shot a glance down, he saw a young man walking over carefully. "HM?" Again, Nao's pupils shrunk into a line as he mumbled to himself, "It seems this guy's corporeal body is incredibly powerful." No wonder Nio was at the third calamity of the heavenly supreme Tao stage. Although he did not refine his corporeal body, he still had sharp eyes. With one glance, he could see that this young man below had an incredibly powerful corporeal body. Although currently, it was not enough to match his third calamity heavenly supreme Tao divine soul. However, it was clear that this corporeal body was full of potential. It contained astonishing potential for development and was far from reaching its limit. "Is this a fat piece of meat delivered to my door?" Nio thought quickly. "Or a trap?" It could not be a trap. How much power did this young man possess? He did not even reach the heavenly supreme Tao stage. It seemed he had not even reached the peak of the genuine supreme Tao stage. Nio laughed and instantly, his eyes became hot. It would be a crime if he did not want this corporeal body before him. To put it bluntly, if he could acquire this corporeal body, his power would be much more powerful than before he was sealed. "I will instruct the two guardians to keep an eye on him. If there are any abnormal movements, cover for me. Fight for a bit of time. I want to seize this corporeal body." Nio was the kind of person who did what he said. His body glided and in an exquisite arc, he swooped down. With a shake of his arms, he formed an impact cyclone and pounced towards Qin Wushuang. Qin Wushuang had obviously calculated everything. Every detail was calculated accurately. When he saw Nio's figure move, he was already prepared. The purple cloud in Yang wings followed and glided backwards. With an even faster speed, he shot backwards. Almost at the same time, Qin Wushuang's graceful spiritual bow was already in his hand. The shooting sun arrows were knocked. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. 4 consecutive arrows. The sound of the arrows breaking through the air could almost tear the void apart. It was very ear-piercing and made that kind of rumbling sound. 4 terrifying whirlpools were formed and emitted a soul-stirring golden light. It was as dazzling as the sun in the middle of the sky. The trajectory of this golden light had not even brushed past Nio's body. It actually bypassed Nio in a strange arc and shot towards the back. Nio could not help but be stunned. Wasn't this archery too terrible? However, he immediately realized that something was wrong. This arrow was not aimed at him at all. Sure enough, with 2 painful cries, Nio's left and right arms were hit by the power of the shooting sun arrows before they could react. Instantly, their bodies exploded and they died. Nio suddenly realized that the other party had come prepared. He sneered, "Kid, you're good at scheming." Qin Wushuang did not pay attention to him. The other 5 shooting sun arrows were shot out continuously with all his strength towards Nio's body. Nio sneered again and again, "Kid, your bow is not bad. But with this little cultivation, you want to sneak attack your master Nio? You're too inexperienced, aren't you?" Before he finished his complacent words, suddenly, a powerful force rushed over from the side like an avalanche. As if the sky and earth changed color, Nio suddenly felt a wave of fear in his soul. This kind of fear was subconsciously felt by the strong warriors of the heavenly supreme Tao stage. Nio immediately knew that it was not good. He screamed strangely, "Shameless!" His figure dashed forward and was about to escape. However, in the end, he was still 1 step too slow. The blue light in front of him revolved, circle after circle of attacks like a shield of air pressed down on him. The pressure of this air shield was actually more terrifying than any sharp blade. It cut the void until it trembled incessantly. Nio saw that the situation was not right and hurriedly released his soul. At this time, his physical body was actually a burden. However, as soon as his soul came out, the blue air shield from all directions smashed down like a storm. There was almost no gap. When he was in dire straits, suddenly, a blue light shone in front of him. A war blade shining with blue light slashed down from the sky. With just a slash, the space was cut open like a thin paper. Nao saw the power of this war blade and wailed in his heart, Master God Weapon. It was indeed a Master God Weapon. Although Li Yifeng had not refined 50% of the Master God Weapon's power, in this kind of situation, the Master God Weapon's speed and power would definitely have an overwhelming advantage. Nao had nowhere to escape. The fatal blue light had already slashed down and cut on his soul. The blue light suddenly condensed. Then, as if a big ball was suddenly cut open, it exploded and scattered in all directions. Nao's soul was directly shattered into pieces. The miserable screams were endless and spread out in all directions. Li Yifeng's power of the heavenly supreme Tao stirred, suppressing all these miserable screams. Layers of air blocked out, perfectly blocking these screams and gathering them together. It shook the surrounding terrain until it was a mess. The insufferably arrogant Nao had died here before he had the time to expand his empire. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 920. It was Qin Wushuang's first time seeing the power of a Master God Weapon. He was speechless. The blue air shield that filled the sky was like a plague of locusts. There was no gap at all. Qin Wushuang asked himself, if it was him, he wouldn't have any hope of surviving that kind of attack. It was too powerful. The Master God Weapon was already so powerful without using its full power. How powerful would the Master God Weapon be in the hands of a Master God? When Qin Wushuang thought of this, his whole body heated up. Although Nao's death was very secretive, it still alarmed all the alien race divine souls. These guys immediately sensed the death signal of their leader. They almost went crazy. Lord Nao is dead? Lord Nao is a third tribulation heavenly supreme Tao expert. These divine souls, while being surprised, also felt very unbelievable. They came out from the dark and started to gather. This gave Li Yifeng and the others a chance. Li Yifeng and Qin Wushuang did the same thing and killed 3 experts with physical bodies in succession. This thunderous method was so fast that it scared the alien race divine souls silly. The speed at which he killed was simply too fast. Such a fast death speed was no longer a fight, but an inhumane killing. The alien race divine souls who were in a panic gave Wang Chan an opportunity. Along the way, he also killed 2 divine souls. All the divine souls who were not killed finally gathered together. There were only 13 of them left. Of the 6 divine souls sent out by Lord Nao, 5 were killed, and only 1 was left. And of the 18 divine souls who gathered here last time, 6 were killed and 12 were left. Adding the 2 sides together, there were 13 in total. When they escaped, there were more than 30 of them, but now there were only 13 of them left. Now Nao was dead, and the one who led them was Meng. Lord Meng, the situation is critical, you have to make a decision. We can't afford to delay any longer. If we delay any longer, we will all be killed. Yes, more than 30 of us were killed until only a dozen are left. If we knew this would happen, we would have gathered the advantage of numbers and fought them head-on. Meng's face was gloomy, and he said coldly, "What's the use of talking nonsense now? Lord Meng, let's rush out together. If we don't escape, there will be no more hope." Meng looked in the direction of the god discarding door, and there was not much hesitation in his eyes. He nodded. "Looks like this is the only way. Brothers, gather all your strength, don't have any scruples, rush out one as one." Once the spirits of these foreign races were provoked, they were also very ferocious. They gathered together and rushed out of the encirclement. The 13 divine souls gathered together and steeled their hearts to charge out. Their might was still very ferocious. However, this made Li Yifeng and Xiao Yishuan feel very happy. Gathering together saved them a lot of them. The first tribulation of the heavenly supreme Tao. First tribulation heavenly supreme Tao self-destructing, the deterrence power divine souls. First tribulation heavenly supreme Tao divine soul self-destruct was very frightening. And it was a great deterrence. God was Li of the God of God, otherwise, of the God. In this way, there were actually 5 or 6 divine souls that escaped to the entrance of the cave. Xiao Yishuan and Li Yifeng were in hot pursuit, and Qin Wushuang followed closely behind. And Wang Quan was in charge of contacting the other 4 supreme experts, cleaning up the remnants in the cave, and checking if there were any survivors. At the entrance of the cave, Miao Su already felt a strong power rushing out. 6 divine souls of the heavenly supreme Tao divine path transformed into a strong aura and rushed out of the God discarding door. Miao Su did not even think. He waved the God weapon and attacked directly. The first divine soul was hit by the God weapon. It screamed and died on the spot. The other 5 divine souls did not resist at all. Seeing the chance of freedom, they scattered into 5 streamers and fled in 5 directions. Li Yifeng and Xiao Yishuan followed closely, chasing in 2 directions. Qin Wushuang was not slow either. He activated the purple cloud in yang wings to the limit, and with the graceful spiritual bow hanging on his shoulder, he chased relentlessly. There was only one thought in his mind: no matter what, he had to kill one of these divine souls. One less divine soul meant one less disaster. After a month, Li Bai and the other 3 also rushed back from the outside. Of the 16 divine souls that had escaped, 9 were killed by them one after another. There were still 7 left, but they could not find them no matter what. Clearly, after such a long time of hiding, even someone as strong as Li Bai could not find them. After all, the first group that escaped were the elite of the elite, the elite of the elite. These remaining 7 figures must be the strongest existences among the first group of divine souls. Li Bai knew that when these divine souls found powerful bodies and refined them, the power of these divine souls would gradually reveal themselves. By that time, the situation of the Tianxian land would truly fall into chaos. The foreign tribes outside the soaring of Galaxia barrier had been eyeing covetously and never gave up on attacking the barrier. This way, it was truly a matter of internal and external troubles. Qin Wushuang, Li Yifeng, and the others also rushed back. Out of the 5 divine souls that escaped from the second batch, 4 of them were killed by them. Only 1 divine soul managed to slip through the net. Once again, the heavenly mysterious 7 disciples gathered together. They looked at each other and there was more pressure in their eyes. Qin Wushuang reflected on himself. Senior brothers, inside this God-discarding maze, it's my negligence. I have delayed the important matters. Li Bai waved his hand. It's not your fault. If you must say, it's our negligence in the past. To keep an eye on each of the 50 people that went in, it's not something you can do alone. It's too bad that the enemy is too cunning. It's useless to say these things now. Everyone, talk about the strategy to defeat the enemy. We must kill these divine souls before the soaring of Galaxia barrier shatters. Or else, when we attack from both inside and outside, the Tianxian land will never have a day of peace. Hua Xie was the first to speak. Senior brother, in my opinion, these divine souls will certainly regroup with Queen Mother Golden Crow. I say we should kill our way to the rushing current valley. We will fight them head-on. If Queen Mother Golden Crow was the leader of the foreign spies, then indeed these divine souls that escaped would most likely regroup with her. However, the rushing current valley was the base camp of Queen Mother Golden Crow. It was difficult to measure how many elite warriors there were and how strong they were. I am afraid it would not be appropriate to go there recklessly. Fifth, don't be hasty, Xiao Yishuan said in a low voice. Clearly, the first group of divine souls are more powerful. In my opinion, the strongest leader of the first group of divine souls is most likely at a higher stage than senior brother. We can't underestimate this kind of opponent. That Queen Mother Golden Crow also has a Master God weapon, and her strength is on par with Senior Brother. For this matter, we must not be impulsive. Chi Hengyu nodded. Second Brother is right. Even if we are to attack the rushing current valley, we must have a strict plan. Certainly it's not the way to go there recklessly. The foreign tribes can afford it, but we are not qualified to do so. Losing one heavenly supreme Tao stage warrior means losing a fresh force. Li Bai nodded and asked Qin Wushuang, "How are those paramount totem elite warriors?" Qin Wushuang said, "They have already broken into the heavenly supreme Tao stage. However, they have only trained for a short time. It's difficult for them to make any major breakthroughs." Li Bai shot a glance at the spiritual key of the God discarding door, and gave a long sigh. Time is tight, this God discarding door is about to close. Unless I use my divine power to maintain it, it's meaningless to do so. Everyone also nodded. Yes, Senior Brother, now you are the main force. If you consume your divine souls to buy time for them, we will be caught unprepared when those divine souls of the foreign tribes come to kill us. Qin Wushuang also felt that it would not work to consume them like this. Senior Brother, how about we just close the God discarding door? At least, we can make sure that these divine souls cannot break the soaring of Galaxia barrier. Let those paramount totem elite warriors hide inside to train? Li Bai asked. Why not? It's meaningless for them to stay outside. It's better to let them train inside the soaring of Galaxia Tower. Secondly, they can protect the soaring of Galaxia barrier. What if there are still survivors inside? Senior Brother, I think this method will work. Qin Wushuang also nodded and said. Li Bai gave a long sigh. Without a leader to look after those totem powerhouses, I am afraid they will be harassed by those divine souls. There will be endless trouble. Qin Wushuang laughed. In my opinion, now it's time to give up those so-called foundations. It's better to drive them all into the God discarding door. Let them be free inside the God discarding maze. We will open it when the spiritual key recovers its spiritual chi. This was equivalent to letting them be free and leaving their life and death to the heavens. Once the God discarding door closed, they could not come out even if they wanted to. They could only come out again when the spiritual key recovers its spiritual chi and opens the door. Senior Brother, Junior Brother Wushuang's idea is great, Li Yifeng said with a smile. Li Bai said in a low voice, Yes, inform all major powerhouses, tell their elite warriors above the Supreme Tao stage to not leave and enter the God discarding maze directly. Of course, everything is voluntary. I believe they can analyze the stake. Indeed, after hearing Li Bai's analysis of the pros and cons, all the Supreme Tao elite warriors expressed their willingness to train inside the God discarding maze. This was a wise choice. With so many divine souls escaping, who knew whether or not they would become the hunting target of those heavenly Supreme Tao divine souls. Inside the God discarding maze, although it was dangerous and dark, at least it was safe. They would not worry about being hunted by foreign divine souls. Li Bai said seriously, Everyone, this is a choice without any regrets. You will only have the chance to come out when I use the spiritual key to open the God discarding door. Besides, to put it bluntly, before going in, each sect must conduct another round of self-examination. You must not send in any more spies. For the Qin clan, they chose to return to the mountain gate of the aspiring throne mountain. Their mountain gate had Qin Wushuang's mustard cave dwelling. Ordinary heavenly Supreme Tao warriors could not do anything to it. It was no less than the God discarding maze. However, everyone knew that in the end, such evasive tactics could only hold for a while. At most, the time in the Tianxian land would last for 10,000 years. These 10,000 years would determine the final fate of the Tianxian land. If you want to know what will happen next, please log on to www.chidian.com and read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 921. Phew, finally I got away. In a desolate island at the endless eastern sea, a divine soul let out a long sigh of relief. After being chased for such a long time and exhausting all his thoughts, he finally got away. This divine soul was the strongest leader among the divine souls that escaped from the god-discarding maze. People called him Serene, and he was Niao's direct brother. The strength of this Ni was also the strongest heavenly supreme Tao elite warrior sealed in the Tianxian land. He possessed the power of the fifth calamity of the heavenly supreme Tao stage and possessed vast divine abilities. Initially, if he had not been too careless and fell into a trap, he would not have been captured and sealed alive. Now that he had escaped the cage, the vicious tendencies suppressed for tens and thousands of years kept surging inside his chest. As he fixed his gaze at this boundless land, a trace of a cold smile spilled from the corner of Nilong's mouth. Tianxian land, this time, I will make your blood flow like a river. As he spoke, he sent out his spiritual perception to summon his friend. As soon as he sensed it, Nilong's expression changed drastically. Only these few? Nilong discovered with surprise that including him, only 7 divine souls existed in different places of the Tianxian land. At the same time when he sent out his spiritual perception, they all responded. That's not right, this divine soul is? Nilong discovered that one of the divine souls was relatively unfamiliar. However, this was only unfamiliar to the first group. Sir Nilong, I am Huihua. I am Niao's subordinate. Huihua? Nilong had some impression. Although they were divided into 2 groups, the leader of the second group was led by his direct brother Niao. It was impossible for him to be unfamiliar. How did you get away? Where are the others? Sir Nilong, our brothers were blocked by the elite warriors of the Tianxian land in the god-discarding maze. They suffered severe casualties and in the end, only 3 or 5 people escaped. I don't know what the situation is now. Nilong's mind trembled. Only 3 or 5 left. He didn't know why, but his heart suddenly turned cold, and a very inauspicious thought rolled in his mind. His brother Niao did not contact him. If Niao had escaped, it was impossible for him not to contact him. Again, Nilong's divine soul trembled lightly. Something happened to Niao? This was simply unforgivable. Who killed Niao? Who killed Niao? This thought overflowed wildly in Nilong's godly soul. This soul made Huihua, who was hundreds of thousands of miles away, tremble. Everyone, gather at the eastern polar region of the endless eastern sea. In the valley of Tang, the Golden Crow Queen Mother led 2 subordinates and the remaining 8 Golden Crows to welcome Lord Nilong's escape from the god-discarding maze. Queen Mother Golden Crow knew that Lord Nilong was one of the top experts in the Fengyun continent. Back then when he invaded the Tianxian land, he fell into a trap and was sealed. Now that Lord Nilong had escaped, she, the Golden Crow Queen, had no choice but to serve Lord Nilong as her master. Your subordinate, the Golden Crow, greets Lord Nilong. Queen Mother Golden Crow bowed to welcome him. Her tone was very humble. Behind Nilong there were 7 godly souls. They were all heavenly supreme Tao experts. Other than the first tribulation of the heavenly supreme Tao stage, the other 6 were 3 second tribulation heavenly supreme Tao stage, 2 third tribulation heavenly supreme Tao stage, and 1 fourth tribulation heavenly supreme Tao stage. These divine spirits were all extremely powerful. They only made Zhan Yu and Duan Shui smack their lip. This Lord Nilong had come with so many powerful spirits. His strength had suppressed the Queen Mother's side. It was not surprising that the Queen Mother was so respectful to Lord Nilong. Nilong gave a cold sneer. Golden Crow, this time you did a good job. You released us from the seal, and when we returned to the Fengyun continent, I will certainly report it to the two master gods. Your golden crow will definitely be rewarded by the two sovereigns." Queen Mother Golden Crow was submissive. Although this Lord Enai Long only had a divine soul, and if they were to fight, he might not be stronger than her current strength, the name of Enai Long had pierced her ears like thunder since a few thousand years ago. Queen Mother Golden Crow had no choice but to yield. The most terrifying part was the family behind Enai Long was even more terrifying. That was the existence that Queen Mother Golden Crow feared the most. "Lord Enai Long, please come to the Valley of Tang for a chat," Queen Mother Golden Crow said respectfully. Enai Long gave a cold sneer and looked at the Golden Crow offspring behind Queen Mother Golden Crow. He rolled his eyes and laughed strangely. Queen Mother Golden Crow was instantly alarmed. What did this Lord Enai Long want to do with his unfriendly eyes? Enai Long actually did not conceal his intentions at all and laughed sinisterly. "Golden Crow, these offspring of yours have very weak divine souls. It's such a pity that they only have such good physical bodies. What a pity, what a pity!" After he finished speaking, Enai Long's divine soul suddenly transformed into a beam of blue light. A blue frost formed a meteor-like trajectory and directly engulfed a golden crow offspring. With a "paw" sound, the divine soul of a golden crow offspring was directly destroyed by Enai Long. Enai Long's divine soul directly possessed the body. This speed was extremely fast, and even Queen Mother Golden Crow could not block it in time. A ruthless look shot out of Queen Mother Golden Crow's eyes as she roared, "Lord Enai Long, what do you mean by this?" As if he was doing something very normal, Enai Long smiled faintly. "Golden Crow, I'm only borrowing your body. What are you shouting about?" Queen Mother Golden Crow was connected to her children. Every Golden Crow offspring was the root of her life. Although the physical body was still present, the destruction of the divine soul was not much different from death. The feathers all over her body stood up one by one, and a faint golden halo flashed continuously in front of Queen Mother Golden Crow's eyes. Clearly, the fury in her heart had reached its peak, seizing the physical body of her offspring in front of her. This action of Enai Long's was indeed overbearing. Enai Long stared coldly at Queen Mother Golden Crow and said coldly, "Golden Crow, could it be that you want to defy Lord Enai Long's orders? Don't forget what your mission is." Queen Mother Golden Crow's entire body trembled slightly. Under Enai Long's powerful aura, the faint golden halo in her eyes slowly dissipated. Only then did Enai Long's expression soften slightly, and he snorted coldly. "At least you know your place. The rule of the Fengyan continent is that those who are superior are respected. If you want to defy my will, you'd better first consider whether you have the right to defy my will." Queen Mother Golden Crow was repeatedly suppressed by this aura, and her aura continued to weaken. She swallowed her anger and forcefully suppressed her anger. Lowering her posture, she said, "Lord Enai Long, I was wrong just now. However, these children are all of my bloodline. Lord Enai Long, please understand and don't seize their physical bodies again." Enai Long waved his hand. "If I didn't admire the strength of your Golden Crow's physical bodies, I wouldn't want a physical body of yours." Queen Mother Golden Crow glanced at Enai Long's 7 subordinates. She was not very confident. The other party had 8 people, and she had exactly 8 Golden Crow offspring. If these fellows were to attack him one by one, all of his cubs would have their physical bodies taken away. If that were to happen, he might as well just kill him. "Lord Enai Long, how can you care about this? If these 7 fellows also want to seize my children's physical bodies, then they have to ask the Master God weapon in my hands first." Queen Mother Golden Crow's faint golden flames appeared again as she stared coldly at the 7 fellows who were eyeing her covetously. Indeed, when those 7 fellows saw Lord Enai Long seize the physical bodies of the Golden Crow offspring, they were also eager to give it a try. However, without Lord Enai Long's instruction, they would not dare to act presumptuously before Queen Mother Golden Crow. Enai Long laughed. "Everyone, you must bear with it. After all, the Golden Crow is a meritorious servant and a fellow Taoist. You cannot go too far. The expression of Queen Mother Golden Crow relaxed slightly, yet she did not dare to let down her guard. And I Long smiled. Golden Crow, my subordinates can give up on your offspring, but their physical bodies will fall on you to deal with. Queen Mother Golden Crow nodded. All right, leave this to me. Don't be careless. Now, all elite warriors with some strength in the Tianxian land have entered the god-discarding maze. For ordinary bodies, it's not enough for my subordinates to use. Queen Mother Golden Crow was in a somewhat difficult situation. If all elite warriors from different clans had entered the god-discarding maze, it would not be easy for her. She would not be able to use those people with mediocre potential. One of the divine souls next to I Long said with a cold sneer, Golden Crow, you have been a spy for tens and thousands of years at the Tianxian land, you must have a network of power. Gather all of these people here. Pick 7 of them with the power of the genuine Supreme Tao stage. They will contribute their bodies to the cause of the Fengyun land. Inwardly, Queen Mother Golden Crow shuddered. She felt she was ruthless enough. However, compared to this Lord I Long, she realized that she was not a ruthless figure. At least, Queen Mother Golden Crow would never treat her own people as if they were mere grass. Judging from the tone of Lord I Long, he could decide the life and death of people with a wave of his hand. Most likely, only those exceptional elite warriors who were used to being in a superior position would possess such bearing. Although she felt somewhat strange, Queen Mother Golden Crow did not dare to neglect. On the contrary, she was in a rush to complete this matter. She must find these divine souls' bodies, or else it would not be a good thing for them to target her Golden Crow offspring. The trip to the god-discarding maze had ended completely. Finally, these foreign tribe spies hiding in the dark no longer needed to hide. 10 days later, a few dozen spies kept rushing towards the rushing current valley. These powerhouses were cultivated with great effort. At least half of them were elite warriors of the genuine Supreme Tao stage. Queen Mother Golden Crow turned around and asked her 2 subordinates, Zhan Yu, Duan Shui, is everyone here? Queen Mother, there are 66 of us. This time, we lost 6 to the god-discarding maze. Now, there are only 60 left. That 9 change, celestial tiger's body and soul were destroyed. And that celestial Miao Yun, the spy I developed in the Tianxian land. She was the one who lifted the seal of Lord I Long and the other elite warriors. She was also destroyed. Only Yun Hong is left, her whereabouts are unknown. Perhaps she also lost her life in the chaos. Queen Mother Golden Crow nodded and said to I Long, Lord I Long, everyone is here. There are 60 of them in total, please take a look. I Long nodded. With a slightly strange smile, he inspected the 60 faces. To be continued, if you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 922. These 60 spies had always been pawns of the foreign clan's power network. They were controlled by Zhan Yu and Duan Shui. In their eyes, these 2 were absolute gods. Now, they saw the gods they revered in their hearts being respectful to Queen Mother Golden Crow. As for the Golden Crow Queen Mother, she was very respectful to this great god called Lord I Long. When everyone was swept by Sir I Long's strange gaze, a trace of guilty conscience flashed across their hearts. Such a sharp gaze. I Long revealed a slight smile. Everyone, perhaps some of you have come here tens and thousands of years ago, or perhaps you are the offspring of your ancestors. This doesn't matter, I only ask you, do you know where your roots are? The Fengyun land. Don't look at how these spies had stayed at the Tianxian land for tens and thousands of years. They had received brainwashing education. Therefore, they only had one belief, the Fengyun land. They only had one mission in their hearts, and that was to be a good spy. Seeing the unanimous answer, and I Long smiled with satisfaction. Very good, your answers are not bad. Then for the Fengyan land, for your unfinished business, are you willing to contribute everything, including your life and soul? Yes, yes. Waves of determined roars rang out, and I Long roared with laughter. Very good, if there are people from tens and thousands of years ago among you, you should know my name and my background. There was a wave of whispers all around. When those foreign clan elite warriors that had been here since the immemorial era heard the self-introduction of an I Long, all of them suddenly remembered something. Each of their expressions changed drastically. Surprise, joy, and even doubt and fear emerged one after another. Serene I Long was the vanguard of the War of the Gods tens and thousands of years ago. An elite warrior at the fifth calamity of the heavenly supreme Tao stage. My 7 brothers are all elite warriors that followed me to conquer the Tian Xian land. Now, their corporeal bodies have been destroyed, I plan to borrow the bodies of the 7 of you. These words were spoken at a neither fast nor slow pace, yet it made people shudder with fear and trepidation. When those 60 people heard that they were going to borrow their bodies, instantly there was absolute silence. Each of them revealed an ashen expression. Their eyes became incredibly unnatural as they did not dare to break away from Serene I Long. It was as if they were afraid of being chosen as soon as they made eye contact. This was not a joke. It sounded nice to say that they were going to borrow their bodies. Who didn't know that borrowing one's physical body was equivalent to giving one's life away? These powerful divine souls had taken over their corporeal bodies. Could it be that they would still retain their divine souls? It must have been destroyed on the spot. And I Long's expression turned cold. Why, Queen Mother Golden Crow is of noble character and unquestionable integrity, offering a son for my spirit to reside in. You slaves are making all sorts of excuses? Queen Mother Golden Crow shouted sternly, Everyone, this is the best time for you to offer sacrifices to the wind and cloud continent. It will be a great honor for any one of you to be chosen. After returning to their homeland, they would bring honor to their ancestors and share glory with them. Now that I've made all sorts of excuses and angered Lord and I Long, my corporeal body will still be taken away. Instead, I'll end up with the infamy of disobedience. These experts were all cursing in their hearts. Are we supposed to deliver ourselves to your doorstep? Whose life was not a life? He had worked hard for the Fengyan continent for tens of thousands of years, but in the end, he had to sacrifice his physical body? If they didn't take the initiative to contribute, they would have to bear the infamy of being disobedient? How could there be such logic in this world? Their faces were clearly filled with dissatisfaction. They looked at Zhan Yu and Duan Shui. They had always only listened to Zhan Yu and Duan Shui. Queen Mother Golden Crow did not have direct control over them. Therefore, they wanted to hear what these 2 leaders had to say. Zhan Yu gave a light cough and said with an apologetic smile, Serene I Long, Your Majesty Queen Mother, I dare to say something. Now, the wind and cloud continent is in need of people. I am afraid it will cause instability in the army's morale if we kill each other. Why don't we target those sects of the Tian Xian land? Those that go to the god-discarding maze are all reputable sects in the Tian Xian land. They are all extremely powerful elite warriors. Some second-tier sects also have many supreme Tao elite warriors, yet they are not qualified to go to the god-discarding door. Our hunting target. When he said this, Zhan Yu shot a careful glance at an I Long and Queen Mother Golden Crow. These 2 were expressionless and clearly, they were not interested in his suggestion. An I Long shot a glance at Zhan Yu. Do these second-tier sects have genuine supreme Tao elite warriors? Zhan Yu was somewhat hesitant. Even at the first-tier sects, the number of genuine supreme Tao elite warriors can be counted on one's fingers. 4 genuine supreme Tao elite warriors, only the totem powerhouses have many of them. Adding up the entire Tian Xian land, There are no more than 50 genuine Supreme Tao elite warriors. And I Long said with a cold sneer, according to your words, with our strength, it's enough to sweep across the Tianxian land? Zhan Yu said with a bitter smile, I would not dare to talk about this. I heard that the Tianxian land also has some trump cards, some hidden elite warriors. Humph. And I Long appeared extremely displeased as he shot a glance at Queen Mother Golden Crow. Golden Crow, it seems you did not train your subordinates well. Queen Mother Golden Crow shivered inwardly. And I Long's tone was not friendly. Don't try to target her offspring again. When she thought here, the expression of Queen Mother Golden Crow sank as she said with a sharp voice, Zhan Yu, don't talk too much. And I Long's subordinates are all elite warriors at the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage. Their training time is extremely precious. They are our greatest trump card to counterattack the Tianxian land. We can't afford any delays. Even if we ask for some low-level divine Tao corporeal bodies, it won't work. As soon as these words were spoken, Zhan Yu was submissive. With a bitter smile, he did not dare to speak any more. He knew that if he were to speak again, perhaps he would not be borrowing the bodies of his subordinates, but the bodies of this second calamity of the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage. This was not a joke. Among the 7 great divine souls, there was 1 at the 4th calamity of the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage and 2 at the 3rd calamity. The remaining 4 were not to be trifled with either. And I Long's voice that sounded like a judgment sounded lightly. Those who do not want to be involved do not move. I will only borrow 7 bodies. Before an I Long's voice dropped, a burst of lightning-like vital lights shot out from his eyes. It transformed into dozens of cold star-like lights and shot towards these 60 people. As if a magic trick, these cold star-like lights locked onto these dozens of people at the same time. It was as if an immobilizing talisman was stuck on their bodies, and they could not break free. Do it! Those 7 divine souls transformed into 7 long rainbows and shot down directly. The momentum was extremely vast. The spiritual energy of different shapes and sizes rushed directly into the 7 bodies. The owners of the 7 bodies screamed tragically almost at the same time. Their divine souls were instantly destroyed by the divine souls of the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage and turned into ashes. Their entire bodies were seized and changed to a new owner. As if he was looking at something insignificant, and I Long raised his arm lightly. Those cold star-like talismans flew away from the other people's bodies and merged into the void, disappearing into nothingness. The 6 Heavenly Supreme Tao experts who had obtained bodies were all overjoyed. They knelt in front of an I Long, greetings to Lord and I Long. Many thanks to Lord and I Long for bestowing these bodies. The others were dumbfounded. These were clearly the bodies of their companions, but they wanted to thank Lord and I Long for bestowing them with bodies. This was not the logic of ordinary bandit. But at this time, these people were still in a state of shock. Even if they had thousands of thoughts in their minds, how could they voice them out? Other than rejoicing in their hearts, they had no other thoughts. And I Long's blade-like voice sounded again. I will only say this once. Sacrificing yourselves for the Fengyun continent is an honor for both of us. Under such circumstances, perhaps you are the ones sacrificing yourselves. But under other more important circumstances, perhaps it will be us. Therefore, don't feel it's unfair and don't feel resentful. There is only one rule at the Fengyun continent: obey the strong. Obeying the strong was an iron-like law. When Queen Mother Golden Crow heard these words, her heart also thumped madly. Even when the body of a cub was taken away, she realized that she truly did not dare to complain. Rules, these were the rules. And I Long said lightly, these 7 brothers will enter solitary training with me. It will be at least 100 years, at most 300 to 500 years. Golden Crow, you must report the situation of this Tianxian land to me at all times. Also, go and investigate who killed my brother and Iao. The Queen Mother of the Golden Crow was submissive and could only agree. After an eye long and the others entered solitary training completely, the other people could finally breathe freely. Each of their faces were filled with a sense of rejoicing after surviving a calamity. At this moment, no one would complain. After all, they were not the ones who died. Before the powerful Lord Enchilong, they had no right to complain. Zhan Yu wiped the sweat from his forehead. Lord Enchilong's aura is too terrifying. Your Majesty, what should we do next? Queen Mother Golden Crow did not hesitate at all. We must do what Lord Enchilong instructed first. Lord Enchilong is Lord Enchilong's direct younger brother. This time, he was killed. We must investigate this matter ruthlessly. We must do it at all costs. Zhan Yu said with a bitter smile. Didn't you say those elite warriors of the Tianxian land all hid in the god-discarding maze? Where should we investigate? Didn't some of them not go to the god-discarding maze? That's a minority. I already investigated. Besides the Qin clan and a few groups of people under the Qin clan, the others all entered the god-discarding maze without hesitation. Qin clan, it's the Qin clan again. Queen Mother Golden Crow knew that initially her 10th son had a grudge with the Qin clan. The Golden Crow clan never had a good impression of the owner of the graceful spiritual bow. Saber Beard. Zhan Yu waved his hand. Saber Beard walked out carefully. This time, he was incredibly lucky. When choosing 7 corporeal bodies, he thought that he would be chosen this time. Unexpectedly, he was lucky enough to escape this calamity. Sir Zhan Yu, I am here. You know the situation of the Qin clan well, right? Saber Beard nodded. I fought with the Qin clan a few times, so I know a little. The other people of the Qin clan are ordinary. Only that Qin Wushuang is powerful. His most powerful aspect is not his divine skills, but his speed of improvement. It seems that along the way, other people slowly climbed one step at a time, but he flew directly. His cultivation speed is no ordinary freak. Yes, it's all in the information. Last time when 10th Prince went to the aspiring throne mountain, he did not break through the mountain gate defense. Is this true? Saber Beard gave a helpless sigh. I also find it strange. Initially when Xian Tianwen attacked the mountain gate of the Qin clan, he only used a genuine Supreme Dao weapon to destroy most of the mountain gate of the aspiring throne mountain. In general, since 10th Prince has surpassed those paramount totem elite warriors, he should not have been unable to break through. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. More chapters, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 923. Queen Mother Golden Crow gave a cold sneer. Facts speak louder than words. Since that kid of the Qin clan acquired the graceful spiritual bow, he must not be an ordinary person. We must not let down our guard. Zhan Yu also nodded. Information from all sides shows that indeed, this Qin Wushuang has great fortune and fortuitous opportunities. It's widely rumored that Qin Wushuang inherited some immemorial formation. By inheriting that formation, he can ride above the peak of the Tianxian land. Just what kind of formation is that immemorial formation? It's always been a mystery. Queen Mother Golden Crow also felt incredibly puzzled. It's rather strange. During the gods' era of the Tianxian land, didn't they build the god-discarding maze to preserve their strength? What was the point of building another high-level array formation? Isn't this drawing legs on a snake? Or could it be that an ordinary heavenly supreme Dao elite warrior did not fit in and did not inherit the cave dwelling inside the god-discarding maze, or built it outside? Zhan Yu said with a bitter smile, the inheritance of this cave dwelling is not a joke. Those heavenly supreme Dao elite warriors should not be so childish, right? That's strange, since that Qin Wushuang did not enter the god-discarding maze. How much powerful formation could he have inherited? Queen Mother Golden Crow's tone was also somewhat confused. Then, she instructed, Zhan Yu, this time, you will go out and ask around at the Qin clan. Remember, be careful along the way, don't meet those two heavenly Supreme Tao elite warriors with Master God weapons. Yes, Queen Mother. For the Qin clan, besides the Qin clan, the Floating Snow House, Misty Sword Sect, 100 Lane clan, and 1,000 Feather Sect, these 4 trusted clans never entered the God-discarding maze. Regarding the cave dwelling inside the God-discarding maze, perhaps other sects would covet it. However, the Qin clan would not care. The 7 Deadly Arrays formation owned by Qin Wushuang was definitely more valuable than the Tian Xian land. The only regret was that the 7th loop of the 7 Deadly Arrays formation was rich in spiritual qi. Only those at the genuine Supreme Tao stage were qualified to train inside. Or else, if all the elite warriors of the Qin clan were to train together, the effect would be monstrous. Training inside for 100 years was equivalent to 10,000 years in the outside world. 10,000 years was enough for him to achieve the peak of the true Supreme Tao realm. Currently, for the Qin clan, they were already at the genuine Supreme Tao stage. Besides Qin Wushuang, there was Grand Elder Qin Xiaotian and Bao Bao. Those who were close to the true Supreme Tao stage were Qin Yunran, Loneliness, Fire Kylan, and Ai Simo and Nan Nan, the 2 divine beasts of the immemorial Azure Dragon bloodline. Next up were Qin Chongyang, Qin Taichong, and the 2 leaders of the Bailey clan and the 1,000 Feather sect. Mu Rong Qianji and the leader of the Misty Sword sect came later, but they were only in the transformation Supreme Tao realm. They still had a long way to go before they could break through to the genuine Supreme Tao realm. Qin Wushuang's current goal was very clear, which was to quickly support a portion of the true Supreme Tao elite warriors to enter the 7th ring to cultivate. He would strive to nurture more peak of the true Supreme Tao stage. After all, as long as one entered the genuine Supreme Tao stage and entered the 7th ring to cultivate, with the speed of 1 against 100, it would be difficult not to reach the peak. Hence, before they set off to enter the 7th ring, Qin Wushuang had repeatedly urged Qin Yunran and the others to cultivate with all their might so that they could enter the genuine Supreme Tao realm as soon as possible so that he could make arrangements. Qin Yunran, Lone, and the others had also obtained many benefits in the heavenly Supreme Tao realm's 3rd Calamity Cave abode. Qin Wushuang did not plan to give them the 2 heavenly Supreme Tao weapons for the time being. There were also 4 or 5 other 9th Calamity genuine Supreme Tao weapons, which Qin Wushuang had prepared for them. Once they entered the 9th Calamity, he would give them to them. This was also to encourage them to work harder to cultivate. It was Qin Xiaotian's first time following Qin Wushuang into the 7 Deadly Arrays formation. Although he was an old guy who had lived for more than 10,000 years, he was still very curious. When he reached the 7th ring of the formation, Qin Xiaotian was more like a mouse that had fallen into a rice jar. He only felt that happiness had come so suddenly. Originally, the internal injuries on his body still needed a long time to recover. In this 7th ring, it only took him a month to completely recover. Moreover, there was also a breakthrough in his realm. This was simply beyond Qin Xiaotian's understanding. Now, he finally understood why Qin Wushuang was so monstrous. He sighed and said, Head Chief Wushuang, this formation is really the creation of heaven and earth. I don't dare to imagine it, I don't dare to imagine it. No wonder you are a young hero and are so exceptional. However, Bao Bao laughed. Grand Elder, I am not happy to hear you say it this way. My boss did not rely on this formation when he trained in the past. Among the 7 rings of the formation, only this place has such spiritual qi. The other formations are not much different than ordinary mountain caves. It was just a powerful seal. There is no spiritual qi to supply training. Therefore, my boss is a genius for increasing his strength. He did not rely on this formation. Qin Wushuang laughed. Bao Bao, my talent also came from this formation inheritance. It's not wrong to say that I benefited from this formation. Qin Shaotian roared with laughter. Regardless, you are an exceptional genius, this is beyond doubt. Wushuang, since you are close to the peak of the genuine Supreme Tao stage, why didn't you stay inside that God-discarding door? Didn't you say that there is a soaring Galaxia barrier and a soaring Galaxia tower? This news did not spread widely. However, for a core figure of the Qin clan like Qin Shaotian, Qin Wushuang did not hide it. Bao Bao revealed a meaningful smile and strangely, he did not cut in. However, Qin Wushuang said, Grand Elder, since I brought you here, there is no need to hide it. I also have a transportation channel that leads to other planes. It's not difficult to achieve the heavenly Supreme Tao stage. At first, Qin Shaotian was stunned. Then, he laughed. I see. This formation is so exceptional, it would be strange if it did not have such a move. Ha. Bao Bao said with a grinning face, those people must think my boss is crazy. He did not use the training ground that can fight 30 people, but wants to return to the aspiring throne mountain. Qin Shaotian gave a long sigh. 1 against 30, only the soaring Galaxia tower can do it, right? There is no such good thing in the God-discarding maze. Or else, the other elite warriors of the Qin clan, who are not at the genuine Supreme Tao stage, can stay inside the God-discarding maze. Qin Wushuang nodded. The requirement of the soaring Galaxia tower is much higher than here. Not only must one have strength close to the peak of the genuine Supreme Tao stage, one must also have a commanding plate. Not one of them can be missing. Bao Bao laughed. Now, for those people outside, we cannot figure out who is a good person and who is a spy. Therefore, for now, my boss does not plan to bring strangers in. Unless they are willing to be my master's puppet, we will never let them go. Qin Shaotian agreed deeply. Yes, at the crucial moment, only our own people can be relied on. By the way, Wushuang, what do you plan to do with that Yunhong heir? Qin Wushuang said, Don't be in a rush, let her stay in the God-discarding maze. Besides my senior brothers, no one else knows that she is a spy. I plan to keep her as a chess piece and arrange her to go to Queen Mother Golden Crow. This time, many elite warriors of the foreign tribes escape. After a few hundred years, when they merge with their corporeal bodies, they will become a great threat. Therefore, our Tianxian land cannot wait for 10,000 years. Perhaps in the next 300 or 500 years, the Tianxian land will face a great crisis. However, Bao Bao said, Boss, I think it's impossible for those divine souls to unleash their original power. Regardless of how powerful the divine souls they seized were, they would only be at the genuine Supreme Tao stage. They cannot seize the corporeal body of an elite warrior at the heavenly Supreme Tao stage. Before the soaring of Galaxia boundary is broken, it's impossible for them to refine their corporeal bodies to match their divine souls. They would be exceptional if they could unleash 60 or 70% of their original power. Qin Shaotian also said, Bao Bao's words make sense. Without a matching corporeal body, it's impossible to unleash 100% of their divine skills. Striving for 60 or 70% is their greatest limit. Qin Wushuang gave a long sigh. Now, I just don't know how powerful those divine souls that escaped are. If they were at the 6th calamity of the heavenly Supreme Tao stage, even if they unleashed half of their power, it's enough to fight against those at the 5th calamity. 6th calamity of the heavenly Supreme Tao stage. Bao Bao cried out. Boss, it's unlikely, right? During the immemorial gods era, wasn't the strongest warrior at the 5th calamity of the heavenly Supreme Tao stage? Since those people were sealed by the Tianxian land, it's impossible for them to be stronger than those at the 5th calamity, right? I feel that at most, they are at the 5th calamity of the heavenly Supreme Tao stage. They can't be any stronger. Qin Wushuang laughed. Alright, no matter how strong the enemy is, it's something that cannot be changed. What we can grasp is how strong we are. Let's start training. In 10 years, I will return to the aspiring throne mountain. By that time, Lone and the others should be able to break into the genuine Supreme Tao stage. Although the 10 years inside and outside the 7 loops of this formation were the same. In terms of the training effect, 10 years here was equivalent to 1,000 years in the outside world. There was no sun or moon in the mountain. These 10 years could not be considered a long time. On this day, Bao Bao and Qin Xiaotian woke up with a start from their solitary training. It was because they sensed a burst of overflowing aura. A burst of powerful power seemed to be looking for a way to release it. There was a loud rumbling sound. Inside the entire 7 loops of the formation, countless strong lights overflowed all of a sudden. Qin Wushuang walked out from that strong light and gave a long sigh. Indeed, inside this 7 loop, the natural laws are still restricted. It's impossible to soar to the Galaxia. Currently, Qin Wushuang had already trained to the peak of the genuine Supreme Tao stage. A moment ago, he wanted to test if he could communicate with the essence of the heaven and earth and soar to the Galaxia. In the end, he realized that all his efforts were in vain. Haha, Grand Elder Bao Bao, you guys keep training. I will return to the aspiring throne mountain. Inside the aspiring throne mountain, Qin Yunran and the others did not disappoint. This included Qin Yunran, Lone, Fire Kylan, and the 2 sisters with the Tsang dragon bloodline. All of them broke through the barrier and advanced to the genuine Supreme Tao stage. Qin Wushuang laughed. Great, I will take you guys to a place and give you guys a great fortune. In 20 years, you must train to the peak of the genuine Supreme Tao stage. 20 years to train to the peak of the genuine Supreme Tao stage? Even someone as conceited as Lone could not refrain from scratching his head. Boss, 20 years, aren't you asking too much of us? We are not comparable to your monstrous talent. Qin Wushuang laughed. Let's go, you will know when we get there. When they arrived at the 7th loop of the formation, Qin Yunran and the others were completely stunned. They realized that Bao Bao and Grand Elder Qin Xiaotian, who had only left for 10 years, had already trained to the 8th calamity of the genuine Supreme Tao stage. They were only 1 step away from the peak of the genuine Supreme Tao stage. Bao Bao seemed to have guessed their thoughts as he said with a beaming smile, Senior Lone, are you depressed and surprised? Haha, you have just entered the genuine Supreme Tao stage and I am already at the 8th calamity of the genuine Supreme Tao stage. Do you feel that your talent is not so different from mine? Indeed, Lone was speechless as he gave a long sigh. Bao Bao, what special fruit did you eat? Haha, what special fruit? This is boss's territory. 1 day can be used as 100 days. Tell me, 10 years of our time is equivalent to 1,000 years of training in the outside world. Can we not improve our training? 1 day as 100 days? Then wouldn't 20 years be 2,000 years? It would be highly possible to train to the peak of the genuine Supreme Tao stage in 2,000 years. Haha, the most recent plot will be very important. Wushuang is going to soar to the Galaxia and open up a new territory. Therefore, he needs to organize his thoughts. He will not be able to explode today. I am afraid he will not be able to explode tomorrow because of some matters. Starting from the day after tomorrow, Old Bull will exert his strength and complete the 100 chapters update plan for this month. To be continued. If you want to know about the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. More chapters, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 924. After taking over this group of genuine Supreme Tao elite warriors, it would take some time for the others to enter the genuine Supreme Tao stage. Everyone surrounded Qin Wushuang consciously. Even Qin Xiaotian, the head chief of the Qin clan, stood on the side cooperatively. They all knew that Qin Wushuang was preparing to open the transportation channel that soared to the Galaxia. Outside of this channel was a plane that Li Xianfeng had set up for him. It was an extremely subtle and advanced plane. Li Xianfeng once mentioned that that plane was especially suitable for training at the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage. It was more than 10 times faster than training at the Tianxian land. At the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage, if the training speed was increased by 10 times, plus the Supreme Tao inheritance bestowed by Li Xianfeng, Qin Wushuang would certainly not have a slow training speed even if he had reached the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage. Bao Bao looked at that mysterious transportation channel with eager eyes. This was not a transportation channel inside the Tianxian land, but one that led to the Galaxia to another plane. For such a transportation channel, the magic power required and the risk one would have to bear were incomparable to the 7 deadly arrays formation. It was extremely easy to transport the channel inside the 7 deadly arrays formation. It could be said that as long as one had sufficient strength, there would be almost no risk. "Boss, are you really going alone?" Bao Bao asked with a mumble. Qin Wushuang laughed. "Time waits for no one. You guys train here. I will go and see what kind of world it is outside of the Tianxian land." When everyone saw how he spoke with ease, they felt more or less relieved from the repressed emotions. Regardless, this was a path to a strange world, a world full of dangers. It would be impossible to say that they were not worried at all. Regardless of mortals or martial artists, when facing the unknown, besides being curious, they would certainly have a little bit of worry. "Everyone, you guys stay here and train at ease. Don't get involved with the changes in the outside world. In these few hundred years, there will not be much change in the outside world. At most, it will not be more than 300 years. At the fastest, I will be back in 3 or 5 years. I will not keep you guys waiting. Head Chief, take care." Qin Xiaotian gave a long sigh. "Everyone, take care." Qin Wushuang ordered everyone to leave, in case this forcibly open transmission array was too powerful and ended up injuring others. Qin Wushuang felt as if his entire body was a ball of dough that was constantly being squeezed. After an unknown amount of time, Qin Wushuang felt as if his bones were about to fall apart. This galaxy teleportation array was indeed a completely different concept from the 7 terminal arrays teleportation. There were several times when Qin Wushuang felt that he could not hold on any longer. However, Qin Wushuang's mind was very clear. He didn't relax at all. Finally, towards the end, he felt the restriction on his body slowly disappear. His body was like a phoenix that had been reborn from the fire, becoming more and more relaxed. That feeling was as if he was soaring in the starry sky, free and unrestrained. Breakthrough? Qin Wushuang had never thought that what he had experienced in the teleportation array was actually a process of transformation, a process of breakthrough. Whoosh! All of his feelings calmed down in that instant. Qin Wushuang's feet landed on the ground. His vision around him also became clear all of a sudden. Qin Wushuang looked around and realized that he was still inside a cave. Only, this cave was clearly in the underground world, and appeared extremely gloomy and cold. Qin Wushuang sensed the surrounding environment slightly and realized that the spiritual qi inside this cave was indeed abundant. Qin Wushuang understood a little and heard the voice of his teacher Li Xianfeng. "My disciple, the place where this cave is located is called the Celestial Phenomenon Land. Compared to the plane of your Tianxian land, the overall strength is much stronger. This is a plane with a master. It is at least 10 times bigger than the Tianxian land. In this plane, there are at least 2 or 3 master god. Therefore, don't let your guard down, understand?" Qin Wushuang slowly digested this information. Li Xuanfeng's voice sounded again. "My disciple, this celestial phenomenon land is not the same as your great Qian starfield. However, it is closer to your Tianxian land. The celestial phenomenon land is a relatively strong plane of the Forgotten River starfield. Compared to the Fengyun land, it is even stronger. Also, it is relatively close to the Fengyun land. So, this celestial phenomenon land belonged to the edge of the forgotten river Starfield, and the Fengyun land belonged to the edge of the Great Qian Starfield. Therefore, the distance between them was relatively close. Qin Wushuang understood that his teacher had put in a lot of effort. Certainly, he had arranged the transportation formation at the celestial phenomenon land for a profound reason. My disciple, although this celestial phenomenon land is close to the Fengyun land, they are definitely not harmonious. That's why I arranged for your teleportation array to be here. There's a reason for that. Li Xianfeng said with a smile, your Tianxian land is located at the border between the Great Qian Starfield and the Forgotten River Starfield. Also, it is a relatively remote area. Plus, there are strange nebulas shrouding the surroundings. If one is not familiar with this starfield, it is impossible to discover the Tianxian land. Plus, the Tianxian land is relatively small and lacking in resources. Overall, it is a relatively low-end plane. Therefore, the Tianxian land can exist for so long without being targeted. Otherwise, in a plane without a planar ruler, it was almost inevitable that someone would spy on it. My disciple, I arranged you here as a hint, do you understand? After a moment of sudden realization, Qin Wushuang realized something. The Tianxian land belonged to a small plane without a master. It was incomparable to the Fengyun land. And the Fengyun land had two master gods tens of thousands of years ago. Now that tens of thousands of years had passed, their strength must have increased. Such a plane would certainly be very popular in the entire Great Qian Starfield. According to what his teacher mentioned last time, since this Fengyun land was related to the master of the Great Qian Starfield, it must have a great background. Most likely, it would not work to reason with the Tianxian land. Even if Qin Wushuang acquired the master god position, most likely he would encounter resistance when he wanted to register in the Great Qian Starfield. Teacher, could it be? A light flashed across Qin Wushuang's mind. Ha ha, my disciple. Your Tianxian land is a plane without a master and belongs to the middle zone. To put it bluntly, you are a fence-sitter for now. You can fall in whichever direction you like. In the Great Qian Starfield, the Fengyun land is powerful and has eyes everywhere. It would be extremely difficult for you to gain recognition there. I think the elite warriors of the Great Qian Starfield would not care about the survival of your little plane. Therefore, if you want to move around in the Great Qian Starfield, your future will be terrible. Of course, the premise is that you have not completed your training. If you achieve great success in your cultivation and possess the strength of your master when I was at my peak, then you can do whatever you want in the Great Qian Star Domain. You can do whatever you want in the Great Qian Star Domain. Even if you want to kill the heavenly warrior controlling the Great Qian Starfield on a whim, no one would dare to oppose you when you sit there. In the end, power was still power. However, in terms of power, it was exactly what Qin Wushuang lacked the most and what he desired the most. My disciple, the Tianxian land is your home. Although the people of the Tianxian land are ordinary, your love for your home is no different than mine. This is also the reason why I was willing to help them in secret. I also hope that you can work hard for this goal. Where there is a will, there is a way. Regardless of a master god or a heavenly warrior, you must remember, as long as you are alive, there is hope to defeat them. Even if you have to lose something one day, you can get it back tenfold when you have completed your power. Those people who bullied and suppressed you will still have to crawl under your feet and lick your toes in the end. Qin Wushuang clenched his fists lightly as streaks of sharp lights flashed across his eyes. A wave of resentment towards the Fengyun land burned fiercely inside his body. My disciple, work hard for it. The conditions of this celestial land are at least 10 times better than your Tianxian land. You will get twice the result with half the effort when you train here with my bloodline inheritance. I have prepared some basic things for you here. Remember, everything starts from the beginning here. I do not want to prepare everything for you. Therefore, I have only prepared some basic things for you this time. Don't expect too much. Qin Wushuang did not expect too much. In fact, his teacher had given him enough good things. He also knew the principle of biting off more than he could chew. If he could master all of the things inside the 7 deadly arrays formation, he would definitely be able to stand at the peak of this world. First of all, I have prepared crystal stones for you. This type of crystal stone can be used in the entire Great Luo universe. As long as it is a registered plane, you can pass through it. Your Tianxian land is not registered and has no master of the plane. Therefore, you are not qualified to use this type of crystal stone. This type of crystal stone is called the Great Luo Crystal Stone. It is divided into 12 grades. The 1st to 3rd grade is the lower grade, the 4th to 6th grade is the middle grade, and the 7th to 9th grade is the upper grade. Above the 9th grade is called the supreme grade. Generally, the lower grade is the majority and the middle grade is precious. If it is the upper grade, it is extremely high-end. If it is the supreme grade, you can only come across it by chance. Haha, just these words, you can only come across it by chance. If you are not at the Master God level, you are not qualified to own the supreme grade Great Luo Crystal Stone. Of course, I have prepared 1,000 lower grade crystal stones and 100 middle grade crystal stones for you. 10 upper grade. As for the supreme grade, haha, I have also prepared 3 for you. These 3 are all priceless treasures. I can tell you clearly that if your supreme grade crystal stone is the 10th grade, these 3 are enough to move a Master God. If it is the 11th grade and you have 3, you can make a Master God work for you. If it is the top 12th grade Great Luo Crystal, then congratulations, one can make a Master God your slave. You can even order a Heavenly Master. Regretfully, my 3 supreme grade crystal stones are all the 10th grade. Haha. The Great Luo Crystal Stone was divided into 12 grades and 4 grades. It was not hard to digest. However, when he heard how precious the supreme grade crystal stones were, he could not help but smack his lips. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 925. For these Great Luo Crystal Stones, Li Xianfeng had prepared them well. More than 1,000 Great Luo Crystal Stones were enough to support Qin Wushuang's daily expenses at the Celestial Phenomenon Land. The second set of items Li Xianfeng had prepared for him was the structure of some powerhouses at the Celestial Phenomenon Land, information about some important sects and powerhouses, and some local customs and practices of this land. Of course, there would be no lack of map. This was Li Xuanfeng's usual style. With these items, Qin Wushuang immediately had a lot of clues. Currently, Qin Wushuang was already an elite warrior of the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage. Although he had not passed the first calamity, he could already be counted as a Heavenly Supreme Tao stage elite. At the Tianxian land, Heavenly Supreme Tao elite warriors were definitely top-notch existences. And at the Celestial Phenomenon Land, they would not be considered weak. Their status was equivalent to the genuine Supreme Tao stage in the Tianxian land. Although there were Heavenly Supreme Tao elite warriors, there would not be many. There would not be more than 100 native Heavenly Supreme Tao elite warriors. However, the Celestial Phenomenon Land was a plane with a master of the plane. Therefore, it had its own unique Galaxia transportation formation. With the official Galaxia transportation formation, there would be a lot of communication between the elite warriors of the plane. Therefore, the number of Heavenly Supreme Tao elite warriors at the Celestial Phenomenon Land, both foreign and native, was extremely spectacular. Because of this, the identity of an outsider like Qin Wushuang would not appear too abrupt. On the whole, the Celestial Phenomenon Land was not very xenophobic. Of course, with his identity as an outsider, it was not impossible for him to seek refuge with the local powerhouses. However, the chances of entering the upper echelons were next to nothing. Therefore, Qin Wushuang did not plan to seek refuge with the local powerhouses. Now, he was considering how to obtain a better training place in the local powerhouses, or to borrow some help from the local powerhouses to increase his strength. After all, freelance martial artists were the most difficult to survive in any place. At the Tianxian land, Qin Wushuang had a sect at every step of the way. He had never tasted the taste of being a freelance martial artist. However, he had also seen the tragic fate of those freelance martial artists. As a rogue cultivator, if he got into a conflict with a sect, he would definitely die a horrible death. Initially at the Xian Yuan Mound, in order to please Mu Rong Qianji, that orderly mountain prefecture master had publicly killed Iron Holler, that freelance martial artist who sold information. The mansion master's guards did not care about what the other rogue cultivators thought and killed Iron Holler directly. As for the others, although they had their own thoughts, even the most arrogant of them did not dare to say anything. Everyone knew that rogue cultivators were dregs in front of enormous forces. Qin Wushuang wasn't afraid of being a loose cultivator, but he didn't want to be involved in everything he did, which would greatly affect his efficiency. What he needed now was a stable platform, a sect that he could temporarily rely on, a huge sect where he could gather information about other planes. If he wanted to inquire about other planes, the average sect would obviously not be able to provide him with the information. In the celestial phenomenon continent, other than the main shrine, there were 4 other major powers. They were like the totem powers of the Tianxian continent, controlling the 4 regions of the continent. Currently, Qin Wushuang was located in the hinterland. Overall, he was still leaning towards the west. In this western region, the strongest sect was called the 10,000 Eagle Palace. This 10,000 Eagle Palace was governed by layers and had an incredibly complicated system. Clearly, it was impossible to approach the 10,000 Eagle Palace. Qin Wushuang knew that although the celestial phenomenon continent did not discriminate against outsiders, in general, to elite warriors with unknown identities, it was extremely difficult to rely on sections. No matter what, there would always be a kind of psychological vigilance. On this day, Qin Wushuang arrived at a major city under the rule of the 10,000 Eagle Palace. This city was called the Flying Eagle City and was one of the 10 major cities under the rule of the 10,000 Eagle Palace. The scale of the city was extremely grand and spectacular. Here, a branch of the 10,000 Eagle Palace was set up. It was called the Flying Eagle Squad. Even the Flying Eagle Squad would not be easy to approach. Qin Wushuang knew that with his current identity, if he went to the Flying Eagle Squad rashly, it would be strange if he wasn't treated as a spy. After all, elite warriors of the Heavenly Supreme Tao sect were existences that could not be underestimated. Therefore, whether he was willing or not, he had to appear as a rogue cultivator. Rogue cultivators also had their own areas of activity. Qin Wushuang came to the Rogue Cultivator Alliance alone. In any region, as long as there were cultivators, there would definitely be rogue cultivators. Where there were rogue cultivators, there would definitely be a Rogue Cultivator Alliance. This was the first time Qin Wushuang came to the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. He could not help but gasp in amazement. Above the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, there was a huge eagle carved on it. It looked extremely ferocious. It seemed that even the Rogue Cultivator Alliance had a deep imprint of the 10,000 Eagle Palace. It could be seen that the celestial phenomenon continent's control over the entire plane was still very strong. Qin Wushuang looked at the towering Rogue Cultivator Hall and walked in without much hesitation. After passing through a few majestic pillars, he entered the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. This Rogue Cultivator Alliance was actually comparable to the Totem Mystic Realm in his previous life. Regardless of whether it was in terms of spiritual power or other aspects, it was far superior to the totem mystic realm. Qin Wushuang sighed inwardly. Indeed, it's an advanced plane. Even a rogue cultivator alliance is so majestic. And this is only a rogue cultivator alliance in a city. When he walked to the door, someone immediately came to receive him. This person was also an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao. Although he was only an ordinary elite warrior of the Coagulate Supreme Tao, his bearing and actions were clearly well trained. It made Qin Wushuang click his tongue in wonder. An attendant of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance was also an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao. This was simply unimaginable in the Tian Xian land. Of course, at most, an elite warrior of the Coagulate Supreme Tao would only possess average strength at the Celestial Phenomenon continent. Before an elite warrior like Qin Wushuang, he did not have the capital to be arrogant. He came up to him with a smile. Mister, the Rogue Cultivator Alliance is at your service. May I ask if you would like to stay, accept a bounty mission, or train? Train? Qin Wushuang felt somewhat strange. Was there such a service as training? When that attendant saw that Qin Wushuang's language was rather stiff, he knew that he was an outsider. Although the entire Great Luo universe used the common language, the accents of different planes were vastly different. Before Qin Wushuang left the cave, he had carefully learned some of the native language of the Celestial Phenomenon continent. However, when he was performing on the spot, there were still some sounds. However, this was the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. There were all kinds of rogue cultivators from different places. His accent would not appear too out of place. Mister, it's like this. If you stay here, you will be charged according to the standard of the accommodation. If you want to train at the training place provided by the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, there will be another standard of charge. If you want to accept a mission or a bounty mission, the standard of charge will be different. Upon hearing his explanation, Qin Wushuang finally understood. This was a rare thing. The Rogue Cultivator Alliance provided training places, but he did not know what the conditions were. He was not in a hurry to ask. He could slowly understand. Let's drink some wine and get to know each other. Qin Wushuang smiled and walked inside. The service of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance was truly excellent. It was even better than the interstellar hotels in Qin Wushuang's previous life. All the details fully reflected the concept of the rich are the masters. Moreover, the fee would not be too expensive. Even if Qin Wushuang only had the lowest grade of Great Luo crystal, it would be enough for him to stay here for 3 days. Moreover, Qin Wushuang did not have many Grade 1 Great Luo crystals among the 1,000 low-grade Great Luo crystals. They were at least Grade 2, and most of them were Grade 3. A Grade 3 Great Luo crystal could be used 20 times as much as a Grade 1 crystal. After Qin Wushuang understood this level of spending, he realized that he was actually quite rich. Of course, he did not have the bad taste of flaunting his wealth. Instead, he chose to stay here and paid 1 Grade 2 Great Luo crystal, which was equivalent to 10 Grade 1 crystals. This was enough for Qin Wushuang to stay for a month. When that waiter saw Qin Wushuang's generosity, he said with a smile, "Sir, do you need any other services?" Qin Wushuang said with a smile, "There are some things I need to ask you. Is there an extra fee for answering questions?" That waiter smiled. "Sir, answering the questions of the guests is our duty. Of course, there will be no extra fee. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I am at your service." Qin Wushuang inwardly praised. Indeed, the rich are the masters. This concept was different from the Tian Xian land. In the Tian Xian land, if you, an outsider, wanted to pretend to be rich in someone else's territory, you might be attacked in the next moment. He smiled. "Then sit down and drink with me." That waiter immediately said, "Honorable sir, we only serve the guests, we do not dare to drink with them. Please forgive us." Qin Wushuang did not force him. "All right, then let me ask you, compared to those major sects, Which of the training places provided by the Freelance Martial Artist Alliance are better? Sir, if we are to compare with the top training places of the 4 major sects, for sure we are not as good. For this point, we will not exaggerate. However, compared to those second and third-rate sects, the training places of the Freelance Martial Artist Alliance are on par. However, we provide not only a place, but also a series of additional services. If you are an outsider and want to be affiliated with a sect, the conditions are much harsher. Qin Wushuang laughed. The conditions to be affiliated with a sect are even harsher? Of course. If you want to be affiliated with other sects and occupy their territory to train, first you must meet their test. You also have to do this and that for them. There are many requirements. For us, you only need to pay enough Great Luo crystal. There are no other additional conditions. Besides, we also provide a lot of crystal stones and spiritual medicine. As long as you need it, you can get it at any time after paying. You don't even have to leave the door. Indeed, it was a one-stop service. Qin Wushuang could not help but praise inwardly. This Tianxian land was indeed not something the Tianxian land could compare to. Thinking about the self-enclosed structure of the Tianxian land, Qin Wushuang sighed again. Last night, I had to consult a cousin's daughter about the college entrance exam, which took some time. But rest assured, today's 5 chapters will not be short. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 926. The existence of the Freelance Martial Artist Alliance explained everything. In the Tianxian land, it was hard to imagine that the Freelance Martial Artist Alliance could provide such services. It would be strange if those totem elite warriors at the Tianxian land allowed foreign elite warriors to train. Their exclusionary nature made them set their own territories as private property. How could they allow others to step in? It seemed that an open plain had more vitality than those sealed plains. Additionally, when more martial artists from different places interacted, it would be beneficial to the overall strength of the plain. Just by looking at this celestial land, it had the grandeur of a great country. Clearly, it was incomparable to the small structure of the Tianxian land. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang was impressed. However, he did not show it. Since he could train at the Freelance Martial Artist Alliance, Qin Wushuang had an idea. He decided that regardless, he would train at the Freelance Martial Artist Alliance for a while. It would be fine even if it was 3 or 5 months. Regardless, he must pass the calamity of the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage to stabilize his stage. Or else, it would not be a good thing for him to not stabilize his stage. Qin Wushuang asked about the price. This training ground was also divided into several levels. The highest level training ground would cost 50 first-grade crystal stones for a month. It was 5 times the cost of ordinary accommodation. If Qin Wushuang wanted to train for 3 months, he would need 150 first-grade crystal stones. Converted into second-grade Great Luo crystal stones, it would be 15 pieces. For third-grade crystal stones, it would be 7.5 pieces. However, clearly, third-grade crystal stones were more popular. If Qin Wushuang paid third-grade crystal stones, he would only need 6 pieces. As for fourth-grade crystal stones, the exchange rate with first-grade crystal stones would jump to 100. For 5th grade, it would be 200 times, and for 6th grade, it would be 300 times. When it came to upper-grade Great Luo crystal stones, even the lowest 7th grade Great Luo crystal stone could be exchanged for 10,000 first-grade crystal stones. For 8th grade, it would be 20,000, and for 9th grade, it would be 30,000. There was not much difference. Once it entered the supreme grade Great Luo crystal stone, the exchange rate would shoot up instantly. For the lowest 10th grade, it could be exchanged for 1 million first-grade crystal stones. When it came to 11th grade, it would not double, but 10 times to 10 million first-grade crystal stones. The highest grade, the 12th grade, was worth 10 times more. It could be exchanged for 100 million grade 1 origin immortal crystals. In truth, supreme grade origin crystals were just a concept. Those who truly had supreme grade origin crystals would never exchange them for first grade origin crystals. There were very few of these things circulating in the market. Once one appeared, it would be impolite to say that even if its value was 5 to 10 times higher than its actual value, one might not be able to obtain it. Therefore, although the top-grade crystals that Li Xianfeng left for him were only 10th grade, their actual value was much higher than the market price. Qin Wushuang knew that with his master Li Xuanfeng's strength, he definitely possessed a top-notch grade 12 origin crystal. The reason he hadn't given it to him was probably because he was worried that Qin Wushuang would get into trouble. Qin Wushuang could understand this kind of thing. With his current cultivation, if he had a top-grade 12th crystal, it would be a disaster for him. It was no different from a child running on the street with gold in his arms. Generally speaking, the higher the grade of a crystal, the more popular it would be on the market. If Qin Wushuang had used a 4th-grade crystal to pay, one would have been enough. Although one crystal could only be exchanged for 100 first-grade crystals, the 4th-grade crystals would have been enough to make up for the difference. However, the popularity of the 4th-grade crystals was enough to make up for the difference in price, and it could even receive additional preferential treatment from the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. However, Qin Wushuang kept one thing in mind. Whether it was in his previous life or now, the greatest taboo was flaunting one's wealth. Back at the mysterious underworld races auction, he had no choice but to flaunt his wealth in order to create a gimmick. Now that he was in an unfamiliar place, it would be foolish of him to not keep a low profile. The Wandering Cultivator Alliance was indeed very generous in providing a cultivation area. It was the best place, and when compared with other places, it was easy to see which one was better. In terms of the abundance of spiritual energy, it was clearly the most abundant. In terms of terrain, it was also the most concealed. Everyone had a large private space, so there was no need to worry about anyone spying on them. Qin Wushuang used his divine sense to observe the surroundings. After confirming that there were no problems, he was relieved. This was a cultivation manor. Although it wasn't big, it was small, but it had all the essentials. Whether it was in terms of cultivation or daily life, it was well equipped. It seems that these 6 third-grade crystals were well spent. Qin Wushuang spent Daluo crystals for the first time, so he did not have the concept of money. He felt that it was quite worth it to be able to buy such a service at this price. Qin Wushuang indeed valued time as gold. He released the 9 puppets and set up a defensive formation outside the manor. Now, this manor was his temporary residence, which was equivalent to his private territory. According to the rules, unless it was someone stronger than the Wandering Cultivator Alliance, ordinary people who trespassed would be killed without question. Although he had received the Wandering Cultivator Alliance's guarantee, Qin Wushuang was cautious and summoned all 9 golem puppets of the 9 palaces returned to one sword formation. In this way there was nothing to worry about. Unless there was a heavenly supreme Tao elite who suddenly attacked, these 9 golem puppets were enough to defeat him. Although heavenly supreme Tao elites were not rare in the celestial phenomenon continent, they were not everywhere. In such a large celestial phenomenon continent, there were hundreds of heavenly supreme Tao elite. It was impossible that they would coincidentally bump into him. It was better to be safe than sorry. Qin Wushuang arranged everything. Then, he began to cultivate. The cultivation of the heavenly supreme Tao was a realm that truly formed a great connection with heaven and earth. Cultivating in the heavenly supreme Tao, one could not forget the operation of the heavenly Tao at all times. To put it bluntly, it was in the same vein as the original cultivation. There were no additional tricks. It was nothing more than absorbing divine power to refine the physical body and divine soul. It allowed the divine soul and physical body to continuously strengthen, and one's strength to continuously increase. This was a gradual process. Qin Wushuang did not feel any discomfort. About half a month later, Qin Wushuang gradually familiarized himself with the meridians. Then, Qin Wushuang equipped the heavenly god battle armor that his master gave him and merged it with his body. This process was equivalent to the process of the battle armor recognizing its master. It was not complicated. For the battle armor to recognize its master, it was much easier than fusing and refining weapons. After all, wearing the battle armor was not always used to kill enemies. The fusion rate was just passable. But weapons were different. Master Li Xianfeng had given him 10 weapons back then. 7 Master God weapons, 2 Heavenly Supreme Divine weapons, and 1 Holy Emperor Divine weapon. These weapons were very superior to Qin Wushuang. But to be honest, with Qin Wushuang's current cultivation, he could use both the Heavenly Supreme Divine weapon and the Holy Emperor Divine weapon. But it was definitely very strenuous to use them. Perhaps if he used all his divine power, he would only be able to drive the Holy Emperor Divine weapon to attack once. This kind of predatory development was really unwise. Of course, this did not mean that Qin Wushuang could take it lightly. In fact, Qin Wushuang still had to cultivate the Holy Emperor Divine weapon and the Heavenly Supreme Divine weapon. At a critical moment, if conventional weapons were not effective, he had to have a desperate trump card. Even if he could not kill the enemy, he still had to have a life-saving trump card. Therefore, Qin Wushuang decided to refine a third tribulation Heavenly Supreme Tao weapon as a conventional weapon. At the same time, he upgraded the Yin-Yang Creation Saber into a conventional weapon. The Yin-Yang Creation Saber, the Heavenly Emperor Sword, and the Earth Emperor Spear were Third Tribulation and Ninth Tribulation True Supreme Tao weapons. Along with Qin Wushuang's upgrade, they had also entered the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage. Once they participated in Qin Wushuang's first tribulation of the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage and resisted the Heavenly Tribulation, they could be successfully upgraded to First Tribulation Heavenly Supreme Tao weapons. The baptism of the Heavenly Supreme Tao Tribulation was important for cultivators, but it was also important for weapons. As for Heavenly Supreme Tao weapons, Qin Wushuang had obtained 2 in the God-discarding labyrinth. These 2 weapons had not been distributed to his subordinate. Qin Wushuang picked one out and used it as his main weapon to cultivate. As for the Heavenly Supreme Divine weapon, it was a pair of divine swords named Heavenly Branch and Grand Wolf. Both of them were extraordinary Heavenly Supreme Tao weapons used by his master in the past. Now, Qin Wushuang and his master were of the same Heavenly Supreme Tao. All of his cultivation came from the baptism of his master's bloodline. Therefore, although it was not easy to refine these weapons, he would not encounter any additional resistance. If he developed them, he would be able to unleash more of their power. What surprised Qin Wushuang was that the graceful spiritual bow seemed to be able to upgrade at any time. Even though Qin Wushuang had upgraded to the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage, compared to other weapons, the graceful spiritual bow was not inferior. This made Qin Wushuang feel incredibly curious. Just what level of weapon was the graceful spiritual bow at that it could be this vigorous? For your information, the strongest warriors in the Tianxian land in the past were no more than elite warriors at the 5th calamity of the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage. Although the origin of this graceful spiritual bow was unclear, if it was a native divine weapon of the Tianxian land, it should not exceed the 5th calamity of the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage. Of course, Qin Wushuang could not see through its depth. It seems that it's not an easy task to figure out the potential of this graceful spiritual bow. As Qin Wushuang thought this way, he began to refine it. The main weapon he chose was a long whip. This long whip was a weapon that Qin Wushuang was extremely familiar with. When he first entered the Supreme Tao stage, he used a long whip. Later on, it was upgraded to the Fury Dragon Soul. Until he did not have a suitable Supreme Tao long whip, he gradually gave up the use of the long whip. Now, with a heavenly Supreme Tao weapon to choose from, Qin Wushuang chose the long whip as his main weapon without hesitation. This way, Qin Wushuang was equipped with as many as 5 conventional weapons. Fortunately, Qin Wushuang was an all-rounder. Regardless of which weapon he chose, he was not worried about not being able to use it, especially since the Great 5 Attributes Reincarnation Seal had a high degree of openness. Regardless of being bare-handed or using weapons, he could perform it. This skill had benefited Qin Wushuang greatly. Another month had passed and Qin Wushuang had initially merged with the third calamity of the Heavenly Supreme Tao Long Whip. Clearly, it would take time to completely merge with it. However, with this month of hard work, it would not be a problem to unleash 60 to 70% of the power of this long whip. Compared to weapons like the Yin-Yang Nature Blade, its power was clearly superior. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 927. After making some initial progress with weapons, Qin Wushuang began to study the third gift from his master, which was the Sky God Puppet. The Sky God Puppet was the gift that Qin Wushuang needed the most at the moment. This was because he had come to a completely unfamiliar place alone. Having a heavenly Supreme Tao fighter by his side was definitely the most convenient. His master Li Xianfeng had prepared 12 Sky God Puppets for him. Obviously, with his current cultivation, it was absolutely impossible for him to control all 12 Sky God Puppets. His strength was still far from reaching that level. Just like the sealed spiritual beasts of the 12 sealed scrolls, the Sky God Puppet could be controlled 2 levels higher. Initially, Qin Wushuang could also summon those spiritual beasts that were 2 levels higher. Given that Qin Wushuang had not passed through the first tribulation of cultivation, he could only summon 2 second tribulation Heavenly Supreme Tao puppets at most. Once he passed through the first tribulation and became a first tribulation Heavenly Supreme Tao expert, he could summon 4 third tribulation Heavenly Supreme Tao puppet. His master had once said that the fighting power of the Sky God puppet was exactly the same as that of an ordinary Heavenly Supreme Tao expert. Therefore, once Qin Wushuang could summon 2 second tribulation Heavenly Supreme Tao puppets of the lowest level, it was equivalent to having 2 second tribulation Heavenly Supreme Tao fighters by his side. His master's gift was not light at all. With these trump cards, inwardly, Qin Wushuang was extremely confident. As long as he did not encounter an expert of the Lord God level, Qin Wushuang believed that it would not be a problem for him to stay alive. However, with his current capital, if he wanted to fight against the foreign tribes and the powerful invaders of the Fengyan continent, it was far from enough. In other words, the Sky God puppet could only allow him to not appear too isolated and helpless when he was cultivating and traveling outside. If it was to solve the fundamental problem, the Sky God puppet obviously could not solve it. The Fengyan continent had 2 Lord Gods tens of thousands of years ago. To control the Sky God puppet, one must first remove the seal on the Sky God puppet. This was a very huge project. Qin Wushuang spent almost a month to remove the 2 seals. Even so, he already felt that his divine power was exhausted. However, this kind of removal of the seal was a great test for the spirit, causing Qin Wushuang's spirit to feel a strange fluctuation. In addition to some signs in his physical body, Qin Wushuang faintly realized that he seemed to have unknowingly attracted the first tribulation of the Heavenly Supreme Tao. Although it had not arrived clearly, vividly, Qin Wushuang could already sense that trace of mysterious horizon. Since the heavenly power was unpredictable, Qin Wushuang did not dare to neglect it. Prepared to welcome the first tribulation of the heavenly supreme Tao. The first tribulation was always the easiest. It could be said that for any level of the heavenly supreme Tao, there was no one who fell in the first tribulation. Even if there were some unlucky people who fell in the first tribulation, it was definitely not because they were not strong enough. Either they were unlucky, or someone deliberately disturbed them while they were transcending the tribulation. Those whose spirits were destroyed by the first tribulation because they were not strong enough were 1 in 100 million. Those who were unlucky enough to encounter such a tribulation were harder to come by than winning the lottery. Qin Wushuang's first tribulation obviously did not encounter any big problems. Although he could feel the majestic heavenly supreme Tao, it was still a kind of appearance in the end. The erosion of his divine soul wasn't too exaggerated. In this way, Qin Wushuang indeed completed his set goal within 3 months. He broke through the first tribulation and became a first tribulation heavenly supreme Tao elite. Sure enough, this goal was to be achieved within 3 months. Qin Wushuang did not get too carried away. He organized his thoughts and walked toward the hall of the Itinerant Cultivator Alliance. When the 3 months were up, the manor would automatically close. It was impossible for him to continue to stay here to cultivate. Without a renewal fee, he could not continue to use it. Of course, Qin Wushuang did not intend to continue to use it. He came to the Itinerant Cultivator Alliance to consolidate his heavenly supreme Tao realm. Now that he had gone through the first tribulation and stabilized his heavenly supreme Tao realm, Qin Wushuang naturally could not hole up in this place. He knew what he was going to do. Seeing Qin Wushuang come out, the attendant beamed with joy. Doing Qin Wushuang's business gave him an extra reward. Therefore, he was very eager to curry favor with Qin Wushuang, this big customer. Lord Xinghe, you are out of seclusion. Qin Wushuang used his previous life's name here, Wu Xinghe. In other planes, Qin Wushuang's name should not be a problem. However, Qin Wushuang was a cautious person. He did not want his name to bring about unexpected trouble. In case the spy in the Tianxian continent could send information to the Fengyan continent, and this Tianxiang continent and the Fengyan continent had not been cut off. In this way, it was not impossible for his identity to be exposed. From this point of view, using an alias was flawless. There was no need to worry. Buddy, I still have a few questions for you. Lord Xinghe, please feel free to ask. Only I know I will answer truthfully. I will tell you everything I know. Haha, I want to ask you, if you want to accept a mission in the Itinerant Cultivator Alliance, how do you know the mission's content and direction in advance? Haha, this depends on the specific problem. Some missions are hidden. Before accepting it, you will not know the content. For such missions, the reward is usually high and the reward is generous. Another type of open mission is to know the content in advance. However, relatively speaking, the reward is lower. The reward is based on the difficulty of the mission. However, in general, the reward for a hidden mission is twice as high as an open mission. Oh, just these 2 types of missions? No, there is a third type. The third type is to be entrusted by the major forces. We, the Itinerant Cultivator Alliance, are not responsible for networking or communication. We are only responsible for publishing. As for the specific contact, reporting, accepting the mission, and receiving the reward, it is all up to the itinerant cultivators to discuss with the major forces. The attendant smiled and asked, Lord Xinghe, do you want to accept a mission? Qin Wushuang smiled. Why, do I not look like someone who accepts a mission? It's not that you don't look like it. For a powerhouse with such a high status like you don't care about ordinary missions, right? Haha. This bootlicking wasn't very clever. However, Qin Wushuang was not angry. Instead, he smiled and said, I am a little tight on money recently. I need to prepare some materials, and at the same time, I need a suitable weapon and other equipment. All these require money. Yes, Lord, if you want to receive a high reward, then you can only take the risk and accept those starfield missions. These interplanar missions have high rewards, but the risk is the greatest. Qin Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Starfield missions? Do you have them here? Haha, Lord, our itinerant cultivator alliance is only responsible for missions in the celestial phenomenon continent. We do not have many starfield missions, but there are still starfield missions entrusted by others. However, we are not responsible for connecting and communicating. Alright, I understand. You may leave first. I will look for you when I need something. Qin Wushuang waved his hand and dismissed the attendant. He thought in his heart, starfield missions are interplanar missions. To put it bluntly, they must be missions that only desperados do. Wealth comes from danger. Interplanar missions are risky and have a high mortality rate. Not to mention other things, just the teleportation array alone has a very high mortality rate. There are 1 or 2 powerhouses lost in the teleportation channel in 10. Even if I want to go on this mission, I need to have enough reward. Or else, I cannot go blindly. Qin Wushuang understood this mission. Clearly, it was not to earn crystal stones. What he needed now was all sorts of ways to hone himself, and carrying out missions was the best way to do that. He could also use this method to get in touch with those giant powerhouses. This was what Qin Wushuang needed the most at the moment. Just when Qin Wushuang was raising his cup to drink alone, a guy with drowsy eyes and an unkempt appearance walked over from the corner of the hall. While he walked, he yawned as if he could not wake up all year round. Haha, Lord, do you mind if I disturb you? Qin Wushuang looked at this uninvited martial artist and smiled. He pointed to the seat next to him. Sit. This person appeared to be at the first calamity of the genuine Supreme Tao stage. In the Tian Xian land, he would be an elite warrior at the totem level. However, in the celestial phenomenon continent, he would only have above-average strength. Most likely, he would not even be as good as an ordinary Supreme Tao elite warrior in the Tian Xian land. Lord, looking at your imposing appearance, I know you are a dragon among men. I have come here to offend you, please don't take offense. To show my sincerity, I will drink 3 cups. Although this person spoke politely, he did not hold back at all. He poured the wine and drank 3 cups in a row. Qin Wushuang smiled lightly and watched this person's every move. It was unknown if this person was thick-skinned or just naturally careless. He said with a smile without panicking, Lord, from your tone, it seems you want to find a mission to have some fun? The words, have some fun, were used very well. Apparently, from his point of view, when one had reached Qin Wushuang's level, accepting missions was more like playing around. Of course, Qin Wushuang would not answer directly. Instead, he asked, What is your name? My name is Jiang Nanxing. If you don't mind, you can call me Little Jiang. Haha, to be able to speak with such an elite warrior like you, let me drink another cup. Qin Wushuang allowed him to continuously pour wine and drink. This Jiang Nanxing seemed to have a great love for Qin Wushuang's wine. He tried every means to drink 8 or 9 cups, as if he was not satisfied, but the wine pot was empty. Looking at the empty wine jug that didn't even drip a drop of wine, the Jiangnan student smiled in embarrassment and said, Sir, I do have a way to get rich here, but I don't have a like-minded partner to join. I wonder if you are interested in joining? I am willing to hold the whip and fall into the stirrups for you, to charge and break through enemy lines. Qin Wushuang raised his eyebrows slightly. Little Jiang, do you want me to be your hired thug, or do you want me to be your employer? Little Jiang stared blankly, then he smiled and said, Neither. Really, I sincerely invite you to be my partner. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 928. Suddenly, a wave of elite lights shot out from Qin Wushuang's eyes. Like an invisible force, it trapped little Jiang tightly. Little Jiang felt uncomfortable as he was stared at by this sharp gaze. It was as if thousands of golden needles were piercing his skin, as if they could penetrate his body at any time and enter his soul. Little Jiang resisted this gaze with all his might. His back was drenched in sweat and he was very nervous. After a while, a trace of a light smile emerged from the corner of Qin Wushuang's mouth. He withdrew that sharp gaze and looked at the cup in his hand. Then, he snapped his finger. "Waiter, bring another pot of wine." "Okay." The waiter dragged his voice and ran over. Little Jiang wiped the sweat on his forehead and said with a smile, "My lord, what a powerful aura. It seems that I found the right person." "Tell me, what mission?" Little Jiang looked around and said in a low voice, "My lord, can I talk to you in private?" Qin Wushuang saw that he was acting mysteriously and did not suspect him. Just now, he used his soul to see into the depths of Little Jiang's soul. Although he could not see through his thoughts, Little Jiang did not avoid his gaze at that moment. Although he was afraid, he was calm. At least this proved that this guy was not playing any trick. The two of them left the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Qin Wushuang said indifferently, "I don't have much time. Tell me." Little Jiang saw that this place was very high and had a good view of the surroundings. He was not worried that the walls might be eavesdropping. He said in a low voice, "My lord, this is information that a friend in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance told me. To be honest, it's a Starfield mission. However, it's definitely not to kill people." "What exactly is the mission?" Qin Wushuang did not have time to be long-winded and went straight to the point. This mission was issued by the main shrine. No one in the Rogue Cultivator Alliance knows about it. In fact, this mission was not even issued by the shrines. It hasn't been issued yet. Qin Wushuang's face darkened. "My lord, don't misunderstand. Although it hasn't been issued. But my friend was an external deacon of the main temple. He secretly asked me to organize a group of people. There will be a big mission soon. There was a lot of potential. Perhaps all the major powers would fight to the death for this mission. Among the rogue cultivators, being able to form a team was already a blessing. Even if we prepare in advance, we will only be qualified to participate in the competition. We may not be able to obtain this mission. So, the mission you mentioned is only a possibility, not a mission that can definitely be obtained, right?" Qin Wushuang sneered. "My lord, that may be the case, but how many missions does the main shrine issue in a year?" This was especially true for star sector level missions. As long as they were issued, it would be a huge investment. Even if those major forces wanted to participate, they might not have enough manpower. The more experts there were, the better. With a force like yours, I think that even those giant forces may not be able to completely push you out. This was not flattery. Xiao Jiang was indeed surprised by Qin Wushuang's strength. It was not a blind flattery. Qin Wushuang naturally did not care. With his current height, he naturally would not have any thoughts about the words of an ordinary cultivator. "Just what kind of mission is it that you make it sound so miraculous?" This was the essential question that Qin Wushuang wanted to understand. Xiao Jiang smiled. "My lord, I won't hide it from you. This mission is very dangerous. This is also why I said that the major powers might participate, but not necessarily. Whether those major powers are willing to take such a huge risk is a problem. This mission is not to kill people, but to mine. Of course, mining is the job of the miners. High-level cultivators like us are only responsible for security. If there are no external enemies, we are responsible for supervising the miners and preventing them from stealing origin crystals. If there are external enemies, we are responsible for resisting the enemy and bringing the origin crystals back to celestial phenomenon." Qin Wushuang more or less understood. So this was what this mission was all about. With this foundation, Qin Wushuang was much more relaxed. Wasn't it just mining? Mining was not complicated at all. But where was the mineral deposit? The main shrine had gone to such great lengths to recruit guards, so it was definitely not an ordinary place. Xiao Jiang scratched his head. My lord, if you ask me where exactly we are going, I don't know. All I know is that this mission is very big. The rewards are very high. Those who return in the end will be given a certain percentage of the crystals. It is said that the main shrine is planning to give out 20% as a reward for these guards. This kind of reward is very generous. Generally speaking, it is good enough to get 5% of this kind of mission, let alone 20%. With great temptation came great risk. This was an unshakable truth since ancient times. Qin Wushuang did not expect the main shrine to be merciful. How many people do you need? Xiao Jiang scratched his head. My friend asked me to form a 7-man team. Normally, 7-man teams form a small group. If you ask me how many people I need, to tell you the truth, I can't find anyone else apart from myself. It's either I don't trust them or I don't like them. This Xiao Jiang was very straightforward. It was precisely because of this that Qin Wushuang looked at him in a new light. You haven't recruited a single 7-man team until now. Are you making fun of me? Qin Wushuang pretended to be angry. Xiao Jiang hurriedly waved his hand and said, My lord, don't say that. The news I got was only half a month ago. Moreover, to be honest, my strength is far from reaching the point where I can summon followers with a wave of my arm. Even if others have the intention, they won't believe me when they see that my strength is average. Therefore, if I don't see the right person, I usually won't open my mouth, lest I embarrass myself and offend the main shrine. Qin Wushuang nodded. That's true. When you find 6 people in your 7-man team, it won't be too late to find me. Xiao Jiang hurriedly said, My lord, please listen to me. My lord, if it weren't for an expert like you, it would be almost impossible for me to find 7 strong and reliable teammates. It's not that I'm belittling myself. I know very well how much strength and charisma I have. But it's different for you, my lord. If you issue a mission in your personal name and gather people, not to mention 5, it's easy to find 50 people. Qin Wushuang couldn't help but laugh. In the end, you're just scheming against me. You're just trying to gain something without risking anything. Hee, my lord, you can't say that. I'm not basking in your glory. I only managed to attract the golden phoenix because I found your big parasol tree. Xiao Jiang saw that Qin Wushuang wasn't angry, and his heart relaxed a little. He secretly rejoiced that he had found the right person to look for. Although this lord's pressure was astonishing, it seemed that he wasn't an unreasonable expert. Although such an expert had to be served carefully, there was no need to worry about accidentally offending him. Xiao Jiang, even if you didn't find anyone, you should have some candidates in your heart. Otherwise, it's too blind. Xiao Jiang said with a smile, That's true. I do have some candidates in mind, but to be honest, I've only heard of them and never visited them. Even if I went to them, they might not give me face. So, I still need you, my lord. I know a few people who are rather famous in the wandering cultivator world. Although their tempers are eccentric, they all have one thing in common, and that is that they are trustworthy and won't be fickle. Qin Wushuang deeply agreed. That's right. When forming a team to carry out a mission, trustworthiness is very important. If it's a fickle villain, he'll definitely cause trouble. Yes, my lord. This is a list I've drawn up. How about we go 2 steps at a time and issue a mission in your name? On the other hand, we can visit these wandering cultivator experts and see if we can rope in a few people. In short, this team must have 7 people. No more, no less. Qin Wushuang pondered for a moment. If it was just the Daluo crystals, it wouldn't be attractive to him. However, when he thought about the problem of experience and the freelance martial artists, Qin Wushuang had some ideas. If he could use this opportunity to rope in a few wandering cultivator experts, it would definitely be a good choice. Right now, what he lacked was manpower. If he could build his own team and open up a big scene in the Tianxiang continent, nurture a group of experts, and form his own team, then when he brought them back to the Tianxian continent, they would be a very impressive fighting force. This was especially so for the 9 palaces returned to one-sword formation. With more people, it would be even more advantageous. When he thought here, Qin Wushuang nodded. Xiaojiang, we'll do as you say. Whether it works or not, we'll give it a try. When Xiaojiang heard this, he beamed with joy and his eyes lit up. My lord, does that mean you've agreed? That's great, haha, that's great. With an expert of your level taking action, our group of wandering cultivators definitely won't be completely pushed out. No matter what, there must be a team from the wandering cultivator world. Qin Wushuang issued a mission at the Wandering Cultivator Alliance. Since he issued it under the name of an elite warrior of the Heavenly Supreme Tao stage, it was extremely attractive. At the same time, under the guidance of Xiaojiang, Qin Wushuang traveled extensively in 3 months and visited many elite warriors of the Wandering Cultivator world. Indeed, these elite warriors of the Wandering Cultivator world were arrogant and unruly. Generally, itinerant cultivators liked to be alone and were very vigilant. Otherwise, they would have relied on sections. When they became wandering cultivators, it proved that these people only trusted themselves and found it difficult to trust others. Of course, to be able to rely on sects, it was not a matter of personality, but many other reasons. On this day, Qin Wushuang came to the place known as the Withered Pine Ridge. At this Withered Pine Ridge, there was a powerful wandering cultivator who was rumored to be close to the peak of the genuine Supreme Tao stage. He was the target that Xiaojiang wanted to poach. This person was called Tai Hong. People gave him the nickname, Exploding Tiger Tai Hong. Just as he set foot in the territory of the Withered Pine Ridge, Qin Wushuang frowned slightly. Xiaojiang was unaware and asked curiously, My lord, why are you standing still? Qin Wushuang frowned slightly. It's not the right time to come. Xiaojiang, they found you. With Xiaojiang's strength, it would be strange if he was not discovered when he approached other people's territory. Just when Xiaojiang was suspicious, a soft voice sounded, as if it came from hell. It laughed eerily. Exploding Tiger, if you want to ask for a helper, you should ask for a more decent one. Asking a first or second tribulation of the genuine Supreme Tao stage trash, isn't that a disgrace? When Xiaojiang heard this, he looked embarrassed and at the same time revealed a trace of surprise. Chapter 929. First of all, let me correct you. I typed too fast last night. At the bottom of the Withered Pine Ridge, there was a huge gully. In the middle of the ravine, a black gas suddenly shot up into the sky. This black gas was like a tornado, rising up and condensing into billowing black smoke, occupying high up in the sky. Within the black clouds, a huge figure with a ferocious face appeared. At first glance, this figure looked like a giant bat. Its entire body was pitch black, and a pair of wings had sprouted from its back. Its face was indeed like a rat's, and it was no different from a bat. Holding a thick black stick in his hand, he looked down disdainfully and let out a strange laugh. Exploding Tiger, I have been waiting for this day for hundreds of years. Today I'm going to kill you while you're sick. Tiger Eruption Tai Hong snorted, his rough voice like thunder. Smelly bat, taking advantage of people's difficulties, how shameless. You've come at the right time. I'm going through the 9 tribulations of the true Supreme Tao stage. If worse comes to worst, I'll take on the tribulations. Don't even think about getting any benefit. Let's just destroy each other. Listening to their conversation, Qin Wushuang understood the situation. As it turned out, this giant bat had a grudge against Tiger Eruption Tai Hong. It had heard that Tai Hong was facing the ninth tribulation of the true Supreme Tao stage, so it had purposely come to take advantage of him. As for this tiger-erupting Tai Hong, he was a tough guy. Even at this time, he would not give in. Even if he had to die together with them, he would not show weakness to his enemies. The giant bat laughed sinisterly. Tiger burst, if you want to die with me, I'll have to give you a chance. Do you think I need to do it myself? Do I need to fight you in close combat? Haha, when your 9 tribulations arrive, I'll perform the great demonic bat sound from afar. It'll be enough to make you suffer. Haha. Hearing this, Explosive Tiger's aura sank. He knew very well how powerful the bat's great demonic sound was. It was a long-range sonic attack that could affect one's soul. It was definitely not something that ordinary physical attacks could compare to. This stinky bat's cultivation was roughly the same as his, but it had yet to face the 9th tribulation of the true Supreme Tao stage. However, the two of them had been fighting for hundreds of years, and they were still evenly matched. This bat obviously did not wish to see his enemy pass the major heavenly tribulation and enter the heavenly Supreme Tao stage. Otherwise, there would be no place for him in the future. That exploding tiger was a rogue cultivator without any helpers. He had always been alone. At this moment, he found that there was no one to protect him. It was really troublesome for him to encounter a major tribulation. From afar, he saw 2 figures standing on the withered pine ridge. He also found it strange. Why would there be an uninvited guest at this time? Listening to the smelly bat's tone, could it be that it was not its accomplice? Exploding tiger, why don't you run away? The Batman's tone was very proud, and there was a hint of mockery in his tone. Don't you know? I really want to see you in such a sorry state. Ha 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 ha. Batman's smile was full of joy. Seeing his enemy in such a sorry state, he was naturally happy. But Explosive Tiger was silent. He glanced at Qin Wushuang and Xiao Jiang again. The Batman sneered and said, Explosive Tiger, are you really pinning your hopes on that trash? Haha, fine, I'll put an end to your wishful thinking first. After saying that, the black chi rolled down and pressed down on the ground. A black whirlwind rolled up like a huge black dragon, wildly dancing in the sky. The big stick swung down and smashed down. Boom, the momentum of the stick smashing down shook the surrounding void, and there was an ear-piercing sound of air exploding. The black divine Tao came crashing down like a huge mountain. Xiao Jiang was pressed down by this momentum and suddenly felt that his limbs went soft, and his soul scattered. At this moment, he suddenly felt that his body was loose, as if he was forcibly pulled to the side by a force. His body loosened. The Batman's eyes narrowed into slits. He found that the stick he was very proud of had missed. Exploding Tiger on the side laughed. Smelly Bat, with your mediocre skills, you dare to laugh at others for being trash? I think you're not even as good as a fly flying next to trash. The bat's face, which was already very dark to begin with, immediately turned purple. This stick actually missed. How could it be? Looking at those 2 guys, one had a very weak momentum, and the other was very young. Neither of them looked like an expert. Could it be that there was an expert helping them from behind? Qin Wushuang's figure, like a leaf, lightly landed on the mountain ridge. He folded his arms across his chest, as if what happened just now was just a breeze blowing on his face, unable to arouse any waves in his heart. Seeing Qin Wushuang's bearing, the huge Batman's heart sank, and his pair of wretched rat eyes rolled around. Boy, you're very rude, the Batman said gloomily. Didn't your elders teach you to show enough respect in front of the strong? Are you looking down on this lord with that damn action of yours? Qin Wushuang's action of crossing his arms across his chest was the biggest contempt to the enemy on the battlefield. It was no wonder that it immediately angered the Batman, who had a bad character to begin with. Xiao Jiang was suppressed by the Batman's momentum, and his heart was perturbed, but when he caught a glimpse of Qin Wushuang's calm appearance, his heart unknowingly filled with boundless courage. He said loudly, "You stinking bat, my boss came to visit a friend, but you're here talking endlessly. Being polite to an untactful guy like you is being rude to himself." Qin Wushuang couldn't help but laugh. This Xiao Jiang was really eloquent, but it was also good. It saved him a lot of words. After all, he was not very proficient in the language here. Although Tiger Burst Tai Hong was unruly, but when his life was at stake, seeing that these two people seemed to be on his side, he naturally would not push away his allies, and said, "Stinking bat, did you hear that? Justice is in people's hearts. If you know what's good for you, quickly get out of here, otherwise, humph." The Batman was so angry that he laughed, his gloomy eyes roaming back and forth on Xiao Zhang's body. "You ant, you dare to reprimand me, you really have guts, you really have guts." After that, his eyes turned to Qin Wushuang, and he said coldly, "And you're still wet behind the ears, your master bat will kill you first." With a whoosh, a black wind pressed over, and the Batman's body shook, and like a black wind, it swept over. The black wind rolled, and suddenly yellow sand filled the sky. The dust on the withered pine ridge flew up, as if a huge sandstorm had struck, and the momentum was very fierce. Tiger Burst shouted, "Be careful! This is the black bat sand. Once it lands on your body, it will erode your bones and soul." Qin Wushuang laughed, "Come on." With a wave of the Yin-Yang creation saber in his hand, the Yin-Yang creation saber drew a huge circle in the void, and a vortex formed in the middle of the circle, separating the Yin-Yang Tai Chi fish pattern, and pushing it forward. The Yin-Yang Tai Chi fish pattern suddenly expanded infinitely. "Yin-Yang Aurora!" Qin Wushuang shouted softly, and the saber momentum was continuously activated. The Yin-Yang Tai Chi fish was like a circle of ripples spreading out, constantly spreading out. This move stunned Xiao Jiang, and he couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. "So powerful, Lord Xing He, you are indeed an expert of the heavenly supreme Tao stage." At this time, Xiao Jiang's admiration for Qin Wushuang was absolutely at the level of prostration. Although there were many experts of the heavenly supreme Tao stage in the celestial phenomenon continent, now that he saw the power of a heavenly supreme Tao stage expert up close, he finally understood what was called the power of heaven. When the Batman was illuminated by the Yin-Yang aurora of the Yin-Yang Tai Chi fish, all the black gas suddenly seemed to be frozen, and he couldn't struggle. Countless Yin-Yang aurora continued to condense, forming a dazzling nebula in the periphery, and firmly wrapped the Batman in the aurora. The Batman was like a trapped beast, struggling left and right, but he was like an ant trying to shake a tree, unable to shake the powerful aurora barrier at all. Seeing this, Exploding Tiger was dumbfounded. He looked at the godlike Qin Wushuang in shock, and his heart was greatly astonished. Who is this person, so powerful and so young? Looking at his age, he is not even 100 years old. The Batman kept wailing inside the aurora barrier. My lord, I know my mistake, I know my mistake. Please spare my life, my lord." The Batmen were known for their ferocity, but inside the aurora shield, they were constantly being refined by the power of the Yin-Yang aurora. It was as if they were placed in a pill furnace, and every second was like hell. When Explosive Tiger saw the Batman's miserable state, he was very happy. But while he was happy, he also felt his hair stand on end. He had been enemies with the Batman for hundreds of years, and he knew how unruly the old monster was. Seeing such an unruly old monster couldn't help but beg for mercy, he knew how tragic the torture inside the aurora barrier was. Qin Wushuang leisurely smiled. "Batman, I have no enmity with you. If you want to beg for mercy, you should beg Brother Tai Hong." Tai Hong was stunned, but the Batman couldn't care less and shouted in the aurora. Tai Hong, I was wrong, I was really wrong. I swear I will never go against you in the future, and I will take a detour when I see you. I swear in the name of the Lord God." Explosive Tiger hated this Batman to the core. At this time, he naturally wouldn't ask for mercy but said to Qin Wushuang, "Your Excellency, this old monster is your prisoner, you should decide." Qin Wushuang smiled and said, "Very well, Batman, do you want to die or live? A bad life is better than a good death." "My lord, I want to live, I want to live," the Batman wailed. Qin Wushuang said lightly, "If you want to live, that's fine. Then be my servant for 10,000 years. His tone was filled with a form of confidence of a superior person. Each of his words could not be questioned and carried that kind of awe-inspiring authority. Inwardly, little Jiang was moved. He looked at Qin Wushuang with a face full of admiration and respect. The Batman only wanted to live, and he had no choice. There was no point in holding on, and besides suffering more physical pain, it was useless. If he wanted to escape and not die, he had to compromise. He nodded and shouted, "Master, Batman is willing to serve you for 10,000 years. I will never go back on my word." To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 930. Using the divine venomous puppet technique to subdue the Batman, with Qin Wushuang's current divine soul, it was more than enough to control this Batman. Although Qin Wushuang did not lack thugs at the moment, this kind of expert, naturally the more the better. It turned out that this Batman was a bat that cultivated into a demon immortal, called the Black-Winged Bat. Since it was subdued by Qin Wushuang gave it the name Big Black. This black-winged bat was subdued. Naturally, it would not have the heart to resist. With a thought, Qin Wushuang could kill it through the divine venomous puppet technique. Seeing Qin Wushuang's means, Xiao Jiang was full of admiration. If Qin Wushuang did not like to listen to flattery, Xiao Jiang's words of admiration would definitely be endless like a torrential river. Seeing Qin Wushuang's means of subduing the Batman, Explosive Tiger's feelings were very complicated. On one hand, he was a person who knew how to repay kindness. On the other hand, he was a person who was very vigilant. Therefore, his attitude towards Qin Wushuang was somewhat worth pondering. In the politeness there was deep vigilance. Qin Wushuang knew his thoughts but did not expose him. Instead, he said to Xiao Jiang, "Xiao Jiang, you're in charge of explaining the situation to Brother Taihong. No need to beat around the bush, just get straight to the point. I think Brother Taihong is a straightforward person, so it's better to get straight to the point. Whether it's a success or failure, business is business, but friendship is not." Xiao Jiang was eloquent and immediately understood Qin Wushuang's intention. He smiled and said, "Lord Taihong, let me introduce you. This is Lord Xinghe, a reclusive expert in the itinerant cultivator world. The matter is like this." As expected, little Jiang did not beat around the bush. Instead, he explained his intentions in detail. Of course, the wording was very particular, exaggerating this matter to be very tempting. At the same time, he also faintly used some provocative methods, saying things like, "Spread the name of our itinerant cultivator world, increase the reputation of our itinerant cultivator world, and not let those giant sects look down on our itinerant cultivator world," and so on. Such words were very damaging to an arrogant and conceited man like Tai Hong. However, Tai Hong was not a hot-blooded youth after all. He would not be fooled by these words. After pondering for a while, he raised his head and looked at Qin Wushuang. Their eyes met, and Qin Wushuang smiled calmly. "Brother Taihong, do you think that I will use the same method to deal with you as I did to the black-winged bat?" Taihong didn't deny it. Instead, he looked straight at Qin Wushuang. Qin Wushuang smiled faintly. "Brother Taihong, before this I have never heard of you, Brother Taihong, nor have I heard of any black-winged bats. If it weren't for Xiao Zhang's matchmaking, there probably wouldn't have been a trip to Withered Pine Ridge today. I only have one thing to say: when dealing with a gentleman, use a gentleman's method. To deal with villains, use villains' methods. Brother Taihong is an honest man, so I won't hide it from you. If I were to use the same method that I used on Blackwing to deal with you, Brother Taihong, no matter how guarded you are, you would not be able to stop me. Xiao Jiang took the opportunity to say, Lord Taihong, Lord Xinghe is still very easygoing. If Lord Taihong is not interested, we will leave immediately and won't force you. But please keep it a secret, Lord Taihong. Taihong was silent, but he believed 70% to 80% of it. He saw that Qin Wushuang was open and aboveboard, and didn't seem like the kind of guy who would backstab others. When the major heavenly tribulation came this time, Taihong suffered a loss without any helpers. He was also reflecting in his heart. Sometimes it really wasn't good to be too isolated. Now that he saw this person in front of him with a dignified appearance, it was obvious that he was someone worth befriending. He was indeed a little tempted. Qin Wushuang said, Brother Tiahong's major heavenly tribulation is about to come, so it's not good for us to disturb you. Xiao Jiang, let's go to the next place. Xiao Jiang responded and stood up as well. When Taihong saw them walking out, he shouted, Hold on! Brother Taihong, how is it? Qin Wushuang smiled sincerely. Taihong said loudly, No matter what, this Tai, owe you guys a favor this time, and I'm also indebted to you guys thinking highly of me. I've decided to join the team. Xiao Jiang was overjoyed. Lord Taihong is indeed a straightforward person. But let's get the unpleasant words out of the way first. Although the rewards of this operation are very high, the risks are also very high. Once Lord Taihong joins, you mustn't give up midway. Taihong said solemnly, this Tai, am not someone who cowers in the face of danger. Qin Wushuang was also overjoyed. All right, since that's the case, Xiao Jiang, we'll wait here for Brother Taihong for half a month. Wait for him to transcend his major heavenly tribulation, then we'll set off together. Taihong was wildly elated in his heart. This Lord Xinghe saying so indicated that he was willing to stand guard for him to transcend the tribulation. With this kind of celestial deity powerhouse standing guard, how could Taihong not be overjoyed? Half a month later, Taihong successfully transcended the tribulation and joined the team. Including the black-winged bat, the team already had 4 people. In the following time, relying on Xiao Jiang's silver tongue, the 7-person team was finally gathered. Except for Xiao Jiang, who was slightly weaker, the others were all powerhouses. Among them, Qin Wushuang's cultivation was the highest, at the first tribulation of the celestial deity path. Taihong was second only to Qin Wushuang, who had just entered the celestial deity path. As for the other 4, the black-winged bat was at the peak of the celestial deity path. There were 3 more, 1 at the 7th tribulation of the celestial deity path, and 2 at the 8th tribulation of the celestial deity path, slightly inferior to the black-winged bat's realm, and still a step away from the peak realm. Among them, the 7th tribulation of the celestial deity path was called Gu Feng. Although his combat power was not as good as the black-winged bat, his talent in scouting, spying, and sneak attacks gave him a place in the team. The other 2 were a pair of uncle and nephew. Their ages were roughly the same, and their appearances were also very similar. If they didn't say that they were uncle and nephew, it would almost be suspected that they were twins. The uncle's name was Lu Tong, and the nephew's name was Lu Xiong. These 2 uncle and nephew were good at joint killing, and their joint killing methods in battle were extraordinary. They were good at leading the charge. This kind of configuration was very reasonable. Lu Tong and Lu Xiong were in charge of charging from the front. The black-winged bat cooperated in the sky to form a 3-dimensional attack. Gu Feng was in charge of scouting in the dark and investigating the enemy. In battle, he could also unleash his long-distance attack ability with the bow and arrow to the greatest extent. Qin Wushuang became the captain without any dispute, and Tai Hong was the vice-captain. Xiao Jiang was the weakest and was the shortcoming in this 7-person team. He was in charge of connecting business, external communication, and other chores. To put it bluntly, he was the role of running errands. Xiao Jiang did not belittle himself, instead, he immersed himself in his role. Everyone was well aware that he was the initiator. For this matter, they must go through Xiao Jiang's network. They could not kick him out just because he was weak. After 3 months, indeed, the mission of the main divine palace was released as scheduled. Although this mission was very obscure, and most people would not know that the content of this mission was to steal from another plane even if they saw the mission. To put it bluntly, it was plundering between the galaxies. Of course, Qin Wushuang knew that the target of this theft would never be the Tianxian land. It was because there was no transportation channel in the Tianxian land. Xiao Jiang walked into the room in high spirits. When he saw his partners were all there, he smiled. "Everyone, you all heard the news, right? I didn't lie to you all, right?" Tai Hong received the news and knew about the shocking return rate. He was somewhat worried about personal gains and losses. He rubbed his palms and smiled. "Xiao Jiang, do you think our team can get a spot?" Xiao Jiang said with a smile, "Vice Captain, you can rest assured." The teams this time are required to be 20 teams. Among them, 3 to 5 spots are for the freelance martial artists. Now, the outside world still doesn't know the exact content of the mission. We also prepared 3 months in advance, there will be no problem. Besides, the one who accepted the registration is my distant cousin. He has a good relationship with me since I was young. Haha, Xiao Jiang, if we can succeed, you have made a great contribution. Lu Xiong praised with a chuckle. This Lu Xiong had a rather rough personality and was the complete opposite of his uncle. Xiao Jiang did not claim the credit. He scratched his head and smiled. "If it weren't for everyone's strength, I would not have a part in this. Even if I knew the news 3 years in advance, it would also be useless. Brother, I know. This time, I'm basking in your light, hehe." These words were very pleasing to everyone's ears, and they all laughed happily. But Qin Wushuang said, "Xiao Jiang, everyone is on the same boat now. Cut the pleasantries. Do you have any constructive suggestions?" "Yes," Xiao Jiang said solemnly. "Captain, we can submit the application now. The earlier we submit, the more advantage we have. Although the final selection needs some time and needs to pass many tests, I believe that with Captain and the few of you's means, our team will definitely stand out. It won't be a problem." The return rate of the mission issued by the main divine hall was so high. The registration was indeed in full swing. In the freelance martial artist world, the freelance martial artists who did not know each other in the past also consciously gathered together, piecing together one team after another. In the entire celestial phenomenon continent, the number of teams that registered actually reached as high as 400 to 500. Only then did Qin Wushuang and the rest who witnessed the entire process of the registration scene know where the main divine hall's charm lay. If not for some people having self-awareness, the number of teams that registered might very well exceed 1,000. "Too crazy," Lu Xiong mumbled, then grinned and said, "But it's more lively like this. Captain, this time, we have to make a name for ourselves and let those sects and forces know that there are powerhouses in the freelance martial artist world too. Yeah, seeing those famous and large sects who claim to be sects, I get angry in my heart." Gu Feng was also very depressed. During this period of registration, the freelance martial artists also fully experienced what was called the fickleness of the world. Those sects and forces teams all had their eyes at the top of their heads. They completely looked down on the teams of the freelance martial artist world, thinking that the freelance martial artist teams were put together by a motley crew. This also made the teams of the freelance martial artist world muster up a breath of air, wanting to perform well in the selection. They could not afford to offend the giant sections. Those second- and third-rate sects also looked down on the freelance martial artists and also put on airs? Wasn't this bullying people? Qin Wushuang did not care much about these meaningless disputes. Everyone, we're not registering to prove anything to those sects and forces. We only have one goal, and that is to seize a spot. Everything else is meaningless disputes over personal feelings. The real test is in the process of carrying out the mission. Who's strong and who's weak, life and death is the best proof. When everyone heard Qin Wushuang's words, they all nodded their heads repeatedly. I'm going out to participate in an event tonight, hee. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 931. 400 to 500 teams signed up. Naturally, there was a mix of good and bad teams. Among them, about half of the teams were from sects, while the other half were from rogue cultivators. To select 20 teams from these 400 to 500 teams, the ratio was also 1 in 20 to 30. With such a probability, many teams were destined to go through the motions, and it was impossible for them to be shortlisted. The main shrine naturally would not allow these forces to swarm together. First, there naturally had to be a review. Teams that were obviously not qualified naturally did not even have the right to participate in the competition. In this way, after a round of qualification review, 200 to 300 teams were directly eliminated, leaving more than 100 teams. These more than 100 teams would undergo an in-depth review, and 80 teams would be selected. The content of this in-depth review was naturally to assess the overall strength and adaptability of the teams. For this segment, Qin Wushuang's team passed through without any effort. Their team's name appeared in the list of 80 teams in the last 2 rounds of selection. The final 80 teams would have 2 rounds of duels to determine the final 20 teams. There were still 10 days to the final selection. Xiao Jiang made full use of his connections in the main shrine at this time, and indeed inquired about a lot of information. Captain, among these 80 teams, 36 teams all have heavenly god powerhouses holding the fort. Apart from our team, among the rogue cultivator teams, there are only 6 teams with heavenly god powerhouses. In other words, among the 36 teams with heavenly god powerhouses, 29 of them are from sections. The competition is still very fierce. Xiao Jiang also felt a little helpless. At first, he was very confident in being shortlisted, but he did not expect the registration to be so popular. On the other hand, Qin Wushuang was extremely calm, as if everything was within reason. Xiao Jiang, you have connections in the main shrine. How can those sects and forces not have connections? We formed a team in advance, and they may also form a team in advance. As long as they are well prepared, in terms of manpower, sects and forces will always have an advantage over rogue cultivators. Captain is right. Right now, we're only 2 rounds away from the final 20 spots. No matter what, we must get a spot. With so many sects and forces paying so much attention, it shows that this is definitely a lucrative job, the Vice Captain Tai Hong said. 2 captains, of these 2 rounds of selection, we definitely have no problem in the first round. The probability of passing was at least 90%. Because the 36 teams with celestial deity powerhouses were all seeded teams. Then, from the other 44 teams without any heavenly gods, 4 teams would be chosen as seeded contestants. 40 teams were formed. Therefore, in the first round, we won't meet teams with heavenly god powerhouses. It won't be a problem to pass the first round. Although Xiao Jiang's strength was not good, his grasp of the situation was very accurate. It shouldn't be a problem for us to pass the battle against a team without a heavenly god powerhouse. The problem was in the second round. If they were unlucky and drew the strongest team, they would be in big trouble. Therefore, the second round requires a little bit of luck. Lu Tong also saw through the mystery. Tai Hong, on the other hand, was rather disapproving. So what if we meet the strongest team? As long as we perform well, there is hope for us to enter the final list. Tai Hong's character was one that refused to admit defeat. It was difficult for him to admit that he was inferior to others. Moreover, their team had 2 heavenly god powerhouses, which was rare among all the teams. Therefore, Tai Hong's confidence was not completely without reason. The result of the first round of the final battle's drawing was not unexpected. Qin Wushuang's group had met a group from one of the second-level sections. This team did not have any heavenly supreme Dao powerhouses, so it was obviously impossible for them to be Qin Wushuang's team's opponent. The result was without any suspense. They were forcefully eliminated by Qin Wushuang's team. There was indeed no suspense in the first round of the final battle. All the teams with heavenly supreme Dao powerhouses did not fall. They all passed the round and entered the final battle. This result was also not unexpected. After the first round of the final battle ended, the final battle's drawing ceremony was immediately initiated. This drawing of the lots would determine the final direction. Therefore, most of the teams appeared to be very serious. Only a few teams that came from the giant forces appeared to be very relaxed. These giant forces would also be listed as seeded contestants in the final battle. It was impossible for them to meet each other. Therefore, they entered the final battle with the mentality that they would definitely be able to advance. This was also the reason why they were in a relaxed mood. As for the teams that did not come from the giant forces, regardless of whether they came from sects or itinerant cultivators, they did not have the qualifications to be seeded contestants. They would be completely disrupted in the drawing of lots, including Qin Wushuang's team. When participating in the drawing of lots, Qin Wushuang's mood was very calm. Even if they drew a seeded team, he was not afraid of anything. The probability of winning or losing was only 50-50. However, Qin Wushuang had never had the habit of deliberately being high-profile in front of others. Therefore, he did not create any momentum for the team. In his opinion, it might be a smart choice to preserve strength and hide some trump cards when the real mission began. In the martial arts arena, no matter how much you were in the limelight, it did not determine life and death, only victory and defeat. When it came to the real mission, the danger and crisis faced could be life and death at any time. At that time, it was the most time to bring out all of your strength. Perhaps it was because Qin Wushuang's luck had always been good. Therefore, his luck this time was not bad. He actually drew one of the only 4 teams that did not have a Heavenly Supreme Dao stage member. Although this team had a great background, and even came from the giant force, Great Illusory Sun Divine Palace. It was the second team of Great Illusory Sun Divine Palace. The main team of Great Illusory Sun Divine Palace was a seeded team that would definitely qualify. Great Illusory Sun Divine Palace came from the southern part of the Celestial Phenomenon continent. Like the 10,000 Eagle Palace, they were one of the 4 giant forces. In the Celestial Phenomenon continent, they only answered to the main shrine. For such a giant sect to send out 2 teams, it was not surprising at all. If they had drawn the first team of Great Illusory Sun Divine Palace, Qin Wushuang's team would definitely be in a terrible fix. Even if Qin Wushuang was confident, the other members would definitely feel very defeated. In the eyes of itinerant cultivators, Great Illusory Sun Divine Palace was ultimately a giant-level existence. They were born with a sense of reverence in their hearts. With this sense of reverence, it was even more difficult to defeat the opponent. If they were afraid of the slightest thing before even making a move, it was obvious that they could not unleash 100% of their strength. However, this was only the second team of Great Illusory Sun Divine Palace. The moment Tai Hong returned to his residence, he laughed happily. Ever since the draw came out, his heart had been blooming like a lotus flower, and he was extremely happy. It was just that he could not express it in front of his face. now that he had returned to his residence, his elation finally showed on his face. He laughed and said, "Captain, looks like our luck is not bad. The heavens have destined us to get a spot. Ha ha." Tai Hong was in a great mood. He patted Lu Xiong's shoulder and said, "Little Lu, let's go and have a drink." Among the 7 people, Tai Hong and Lu Xiong were the kind of forthright people. Their personalities were similar, so they seemed to hit it off very well. Lu Xiong rubbed his palms and said with a smile, "Let's go together. Such a good draw, it's not right not to celebrate. This is practically a guaranteed spot." Gu Feng did not speak, playing with his bow in the corner. This was his favorite hobby as an assassin. Lu Tong's personality was steady. He did not speak either, but looked at Qin Wushuang. Little Jiang saw that Qin Wushuang did not speak and could not help but ask, "Captain, everyone suggests going for a drink." Black Wing Bat suddenly grinned and said, "Do you think the captain's brain is as simple as yours?" Blind optimism. Black Wing, what do you mean? Although Tai Hong and Black Wing were now comrades in the trenches, the grudges that had been entangled for hundreds of years still made them occasionally have small conflicts in their words. Fortunately, Black Wing was very clear about his position and did not argue with Tai Hong. He laughed strangely and said, "Vice Captain Tai, now that you're a vice captain, don't you like to use your brain?" Little Jiang suddenly said, "Captain, do you have any misgivings?" Qin Wushuang sighed and said, "I'd rather that we drew other teams with Heavenly God powerhouses. This great illusory Sun Divine Palace team is not easy to deal with. For a mere second team, Captain, there's no need to overestimate them, right?" Lu Xiong scratched his head and said hesitantly, "Everyone, a major force like Great Illusory Sun Divine Palace actually sent out a second team. They must have their plans. In terms of strength, suppressing this second team is definitely no problem. But whether or not Great Illusory Sun Divine Palace will let us enter the stage smoothly, this is unknown." Qin Wushuang's tone appeared to be wary and unfathomable, with deep meaning. "Captain, you mean?" Although Tai Hong's personality was straightforward, he was not blindly straightforward and did not know how to beat around the bush. On the contrary, the innate sensitivity of an itinerant cultivator allowed Tai Hong to grasp some things at once. Black Wing said with a cold smile, "The leader of Great Illusory Sun Divine Palace's team this time is said to be the #1 powerhouse of the young generation, Ri Dongshan. This Ri Dongshan has a strong personality and has always been domineering. His sect concept is extremely important and he is the most protective. Us drawing Great Illusory Sun Divine Palace really isn't a good draw." Little Zhang's face darkened and said stutteringly, "Taoist Brother Black Wing's evaluation of Ri Dongshan makes a lot of sense. Captain, how about we change places before the battle starts? Lest that guy directly comes looking for us, we can't avoid it. Let's change places. Out of sight, out of mind." "Little Jiang, you've been smart all your life, but you're stupid this time. That day, Ri Dongshan came looking for you and me. Do you think you can avoid him with your little tricks?" Black Wing's tone was very sarcastic, but the logic was indeed the same. Everyone's eyes unconsciously locked onto Qin Wushuang's face. At this time, they needed the captain to make a decision. Only at this critical moment did the captain have the right to make the decision. He was the backbone of the team. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 932. Qin Wushuang met everyone's expectant gazes and smiled faintly. "Everyone, I only have one question for you. Do you fear the Great Illusory Sun Divine Palace from the depths of your hearts?" This was a very special question. Qin Wushuang didn't allow anyone to escape, and asked directly, "Vice Captain Tai Hong, you answer first." Tai Hong was taken aback and smiled bitterly. He didn't pretend anything. To be honest, the other factions of the celestial phenomenon continent are one thing, but the four major factions are second only to the main shrine. It's impossible to say that I don't fear them at all. Seeing Tai Hong being so honest, the others took the opportunity to nod and agree. Qin Wushuang wasn't angry. He nodded. All right, I can tell you that I don't feel anything towards these major factions. But I can understand your fear of the great illusory Sun Divine Palace. Now I'll ask you one last question. Captain, ask away. I want to know if your pursuit of your destiny, your urgency for this mission, can overcome this fear of the major factions. If you can't, we'll give up immediately and disband the team. I won't force anyone. If you think you can overcome this fear, then you must listen to my orders and accept all challenges. I only want to say 5 words. Wealth comes from danger. What a great wealth comes from danger. Wandering cultivators like them weren't born to be rich. If they wanted to be rich, they had to pull chestnuts out of the fire. Everyone's eyes flashed with a complicated light. Clearly, they were making an extremely difficult choice in their hearts. These complicated gazes focused on Qin Wushuang's face. They saw Qin Wushuang's calm face, and within that calmness, there was a calmness that moved their hearts. Suddenly, everyone's emotions were stirred by Qin Wushuang's calmness. The adventurous nature of wandering cultivators in their bones gradually boiled over. Captain, what a great wealth comes from danger. We're not afraid of the great illusory Sun Divine Palace. This is the main shrine's territory. It's not the great illusory Sun Divine Palace's turn to abuse their power. Lu Xiong was the first to shout. Captain, I've decided to follow you. When the others saw Lu Xiong shouting, the fierce spirit in their bones also flared up. Tai Hong said, If I die, I'll die with my eggs facing the sky. If I don't, I'll live for thousands of years. Captain, you're right. If you want to be rich, how can you succeed without taking some risk? Captain, you have the final say. Lu Tong also spoke up. Gu Feng was still wiping his bow. He muttered, I have no objections. Little Jiang chuckled and said, All of you are stronger than me. You may not be afraid, but I, Little Jiang, am not afraid of wearing shoes. Besides, I'm very confident in our captain. The black-winged bat mumbled, Why are you looking at me? I only have one principle. I'll do whatever the captain says. Everyone burst into laughter. At this moment, Qin Wushuang's smile suddenly froze. His ears twitched slightly, and he cast a meaningful glance in the direction outside the window. A mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he said in a deep voice, This person really can't be missed. He came just like that. Hearing Qin Wushuang's words, everyone's expression became serious. He came? Captain, who came? Qin Wushuang smiled faintly. Everyone, calm down. Stay here. I'll go out and greet him. Seeing Qin Wushuang's calm expression, everyone's reverence for the great illusory Sun Divine Palace also eased a little. With such a steady and calm captain, they felt that they had a backbone. Vice-captain, is it that person who came? Everyone knew that the person referred to was Sun Dongshan of the great illusory Sun Divine Palace. Only Tai Hong, the vice-captain, had broken through the barrier of the true Supreme Tao stage, and could sense some of the aura of a heavenly god expert. Tai Hong's expression froze slightly. He showed a thoughtful expression, then nodded. Everyone, don't talk nonsense. Everything will be clear when the captain comes back. Qin Wushuang came out of the door and stood with his arms crossed. He saw that the street in front of him was like a ball of fire that was constantly approaching. That Sun Dongshan's aura was like a surging red sun that was constantly rising from the street. That ball of flame-like aura rolled over wave after wave, causing the surrounding air to be filled with heat wave. Qin Wushuang's body emitted rays of green light. His entire person was like an old tree that had been entrenched here for thousands of years, standing tall and straight. Wu Xinghe? Sun Dongshan's thick fire-colored eyebrows slightly raised. They were like two long swords hanging high in the sky, giving people a very strong sense of oppression. Qin Wuxuang smiled casually, like a gentle breeze caressing his face, and casually nodded. Very good, I was just about to look for you. Sun Dongshan appeared to be very direct as he spoke. His gaze sized up Qin Wuxuang a few times, filled with the sense of a superior looking down at a subordinate. I know you're looking for me. Qin Wuxuang smiled somewhat playfully. Sun Dongshan could not help but look at Qin Wuxuang a few more times. Then you know why I'm here? I know. Qin Wuxuang did not answer much. Talking to smart people is indeed delightful. Sun Dongshan faintly smiled, and said in a negotiating tone, All right, tell me, what conditions do you need before you're willing to withdraw? Open your mouth. My great illusory Sun Divine Palace will not take advantage of you for nothing. In Sun Dongshan's view, it was already a great gift for him to personally come and see these rogue cultivators. Compared to the great illusory Sun Divine Palace, a mere rogue cultivator team with small arms and legs was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Who would have thought that after he said these words, Qin Wuxuang leisurely shook his head. Sir, I think you've misunderstood. I know you'll come, but that doesn't mean we'll withdraw. Sun Dongshan's two eyebrows suddenly raised. The murderous aura between his eyebrows suddenly condensed like a ball of fire. Rogue cultivator friend, are you sure you won't withdraw? Qin Wuxuang faintly smiled, his gaze not backing down. He stared at Sun Dongshan and asked coldly, Sir, do we have a reason to withdraw? Of course. Sun Dongshan coldly snorted. Just the fact that I'm standing here and answering you is the biggest reason. Rogue cultivator friend, let me remind you that withdrawing is your wisest choice. If you withdraw, you'll receive a handsome reward. Otherwise, you'll be making an enemy of my great illusory Sun Divine Palace. This kind of threat could be said to be very blatant and not just a little arrogant. However, Sun Dongshan was able to express such arrogant words in a very cold tone. In that case, the great illusory Sun Divine Palace seems to have more power than the main palace. Qin Wuxuang half smiled, but the hint of mockery in his tone was not deliberately concealed. The great illusory Sun Divine Palace may be powerful, but you can't bully others like this. If the main palace is high and mighty, does the great illusory Sun Divine Palace want to use its usual domineering style to destroy the fair competition? Sun Dongshan's expression turned cold, showing extreme displeasure. Sir, I can see that you refuse a toast and intend to drink a forfeit. Very well, then you can go to the final stage. Whether that spot is a blessing or a curse for you will be tested one day. Sun Dongshan was a straightforward person. He clearly knew that in the main palace's territory, it was not his place to cause trouble. Leaving behind a cold sentence and leaving was a wise choice. When they saw Qin Wuxuang had sent Ri Dongshan away, everyone felt slightly relieved inwardly. No matter what, Sun Dongshan, the evil god, had left. Captain, Sun Dongshan is narrow-minded. I think he'll take the opportunity to take revenge on us. Little Jiang said worriedly. Qin Wuxuang waved his hand. Don't think too much, everyone. Sun Dongshan is indeed powerful. In terms of cultivation, he's even 2 levels higher than me. However, this is not a reason for us to be afraid of him. Hearing the captain say this, everyone was surprised. 2 levels higher than the captain? Could it be that Sun Dongshan was already a third tribulation heavenly supreme Tao expert that day? The black-winged bat muttered and cursed. These giant forces have occupied the best territory and the best resources. This is all obtained by squeezing the living space of us lone cultivators. Qin Wuxuang waved his hand. Everyone, go back and rest. Prepare well for the battle. Just do your best. A team of 7, 7 against 4. As long as we perform at our normal level, there will be no problem for us to advance. Putting aside the external factors, this lot was indeed a good one. In the final battle of 7 against 4, Qin Wushuang didn't even need to fight. After 6 rounds, they finished the battle with 4 wins and 2 losses. One could imagine how ugly the faces of the great illusory Sun Divine Palace were. Especially that day, Sun Dongshan's gaze was like a bone-scraping steel knife, scanning Qin Wushuang and the others back and forth like a hunter sizing up his prey. Those who knew how powerful Sun Dongshan was were all sighing secretly. This lone cultivator team really didn't know what was good for them. They went against Sun Dongshan's will. Even if they made it to the final list, they would suffer when the mission started. Someone like Sun Dongshan who wouldn't take a loss overnight would definitely make a move. Even Xiaojiang's distant cousin, the deacon who cultivated in the main shrine, secretly told Xiaojiang, "It seems that your team has angered Sun Dongshan this time." In the main shrine's territory, the great illusory Sun Divine Palace won't dare to mess around, but this mission is across plains. You must be careful when you leave the celestial phenomenon continent. Don't give Sun Dongshan a chance to make trouble for you. Xiaojiang smiled bitterly. Brother, we know that Sun Dongshan is not to be trifled with, but it's a pity to give up such an opportunity. Moreover, our team leader is a very strong-willed expert. He wasn't scared out of his wits by Sun Dongshan's threat. The deacon sighed. In my opinion, it's better for you to strategically give up. With Sun Dongshan's temperament, he will definitely deal with you. Xiaojiang sighed. Brother, we've prepared for so long. We can't accept giving up at the last step. The deacon smiled bitterly, but didn't say anything else. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.